Welcome to the September 29th. Welcome to the September 29th, 2025 meeting of Envision Needham Center Project Working Group. As a reminder, this meeting is being broadcast to the town YouTube channel and also via Zoom, being recorded for publication and later viewing in administrative purposes. I've not been notified that anyone else is recording the meeting, but if anyone wishes to do so, please notify me, the chair. We'll take our roll call attendance. We're in hybrid. Eileen Baker.
Here.
Tim Bolger, present. Artie Crocker.
Here.
Lisa Elcock.
Here.
Paul Good.
Here.
Liz Hay.
Here.
Paula Jacobson.
Here.
Kevin Keane.
Here.
Avery Newton.
Here.
Diane Nanny.
Here.
Paul O'Connor.
Here.
Harris Lustig.
Here.
Okay, we also have Margot and Jim from Apex, and Cassandra is online. And I just I want to remind everyone that today's committee meeting is not a formal public hearing. It doesn't include a period for public comment. The purpose of these meetings is to allow the committee to discuss and develop recommendations for the project and help facilitate future public engagement. There will continue to be opportunities for members of the public to share their input throughout the process, and other engagement opportunities as the project moves forward. Your feedback is an important part of the process, so we encourage you to participate in those channels and also, send emails that get shared with the committee as a whole. So the meetings themselves are the committees to discuss the agenda items. And so then the first item on the agenda is general business feedback from Eileen Baker. She's just kind of compiled some notes about the plans from businesses, and she will kind of present to us some feedback that she's heard so we can kind of parse that information. So Eileen, if you're ready,
Yeah.
you go ahead and everyone can just be kind of quiet so that we can hear the speaker. Be great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I did reach out to as many businesses as I could about the plans because I was getting a lot of questions about it, and I thought it'd be best to just hear their feedback on them. And not surprisingly, there was an overwhelming they were not ready to get behind any plan yet because they feel all of them do need modifications and improvements. But if they were to have to pick a plan today, it would be the 4-lane plan. But all felt very strongly about the fact that they do need modifications, except for one business. Before any, the most feedback, the thing that we got the most feedback on was the light syncing, that before any traffic study or decision on a plan is made, that everyone feels strongly about the fact that those lights need to be synced up, because they feel that that could change the traffic pattern drastically. And why would like a traffic study be done before that? Why would plans be made before that? And the whole domino effect. Everyone is still very concerned about parking because they want to see more detailed information as to so obviously spots are being taken away on Great Plain Avenue. So they want to know how you came up with the number, like these spots are being netted out. So where exactly are the new spots going to be? For instance, if spots on Great Plain Avenue are taken away, but put in on Dedham Avenue, that doesn't do Needham Florist any good. So they want to know more information of exactly where the parking placement is. Another thing that came back overwhelming is that the plans state that the bike lanes can be added and parking can be removed at a later date. And they want to know what the criteria for that is, who's going to decide that this is going to happen, under what circumstances, because all this work is for nothing if it's just going to be in a few years from now that all of this is going to be taken away. There was concern about Great Plain Avenue between Dedham and Pickering to remain 2 lanes. Deliveries for Needham House of Pizza and a New Leaf and UPS will cause a major backup if there are not 2 lanes. Delivery concerns have still not been addressed, which we were talking about earlier today, Karis and Liz. The survey for deliveries was very confusing for people because they seem to have left out UPS and FedEx. And I know you explained that that was already accounted for, but the businesses did not understand that, rightfully so. So I feel like that's something that has to be addressed further or explained further to the businesses. They're very concerned about maintenance. Trees are nice if the town is willing to prune and maintain them. Sitting areas are nice if the town is willing to clean and wash the sidewalks periodically. The responsibility of maintenance should not be put on the businesses. The Highland Avenue project, even though it's a separate project, we're very concerned about the impact to other Needham Center businesses such as Crosby Jewelers, Black Sheep Knitting, Pex Health, and many more. It'll still create a domino effect onto Great Plain Avenue when it comes to parking, and we also stand behind the businesses on Highland Avenue. We still haven't heard a real plan for emergency vehicles. We're highly concerned about this. Response times for emergency vehicles have increased, so 2 minutes completely change the outcome of someone's life. The sewers and the MBTA plans, we're very confused about that. At the last meeting, Tom Ryder kindly explained that the drainage needs to be addressed when a project of this size takes place. But we were told that this was a lot of the reasons why this is taking place is because of the drainage. So we don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. And then also if the MBTA quiet zone project is delayed, and this is something to do with putting the streets back together in conjunction with that, why is this still going forward in the rapid pace that it's going? The timeline seems to be very rushed. How can we actually move forward if all the above points aren't taken into consideration? This does not even include public outreach and feedback, which will be addressed by Liz. However, I must point out that the public outreach cannot be rushed. It needs to be thorough. It didn't work last year. So why are we rushing it? December doesn't seem feasible for the select board to make a decision. I'm going to quote one business saying, in 10 to 20 years from now, if the town has succeeded into turning downtown into a multi-story residential buildings, they can reassess further pedestrianizing to meet that use case. For now, the downtown area is a car-based ecosystem and will be for some time to come. This is why we feel anything other than potentially the 4-lane plan will not be able to have our support. And one other thing that was said to me later, which actually I think is really impactful, and it was from a business that's been around for a very long time in Needham Center, that if this gets killed, meaning Needham Center itself, we'll never get it back. And I took that to mean that we'll end up with condos and big businesses like Legacy Place in the street in Chestnut Hill, and that's just not what Needham Center is. So that is all the general feedback from the businesses. Thank you.
Questions or?
Thank you, Eileen.
Eileen, you filled it.
So I think a couple questions that I have, and maybe there's 2 items that we can provide. One is, Tyler, can you just give an update of the bottleneck grant, which I think is the traffic signal coordination? We did have a delay in that project because we're working with the state. It's state funded. They had specified a type of signal. We are looking at one that is more sophisticated, that can interact better and provide more continuity through the corridor. And so we're working on a change order now, but do you want to just give an update of where we are with that negotiation?
Well, we're halfway there. That was most of the update. Essentially, the scope of the contract that was bid out did not have the advanced adaptive technology that we believe that these 2 highly visible intersections really need. So we were working through submittals for a different detection system that would allow for that technology. We are working out the details with the contractor on that now. It'll require a change order that to be approved by the state because it's the state's bottleneck program. We don't anticipate an issue with that. And then we still are on track to implement the changes before the end of this calendar year.
So can I ask a question then? So then how could Apex do a traffic study if that hasn't been done yet?
So they use modeling, and they can certainly speak to how that project works, but they're looking at, tonight they'll present the different scenarios that we have in front of us, including existing conditions. And they're going to optimize whichever scenario we end up going to. They're going to try to optimize traffic flow through how the intersections interact with each other. So they're running off of
But
models.
off of now, not off of what it will be.
No, so they are comparing now to the 3 different models that we've presented and how the modeling is showing traffic will flow through the downtown. So there's, industry accepted practices about how to calculate this sort of information, and that's what they're utilizing. If you're asking, do we think that the existing conditions will improve with simply that modification? The answer to that is yes, and that's being factored in to their for the 4-lane alternative that's being presented.
If I could just speak to that as an addition, so the adaptive technology will, it needs data in order to make determinations on how to optimize the traffic conditions, so essentially, what they would be looking to change with the signals is very similar to what is proposed already. It's just that the adaptive technology would allow the system to run analysis on that data and make tweaks to the timings in order to adapt. So we're not talking about a totally different timing plan. We're talking about technology that will allow it to get even better beyond that. So it's not a completely different system. Is that about right?
Excuse me. Yes, that's a fair statement, because the way the adaptive technology works is you set up the equipment, it literally observes traffic for weeks before the signals are up and running, because it's creating algorithms and figuring out the travel patterns and, when there's a train crossing or a pedestrian, like it takes it's very, very complicated, and it all is done internally within the controller. So it just kind of helps adapt the signals to really be optimal during all times.
So I think generally when you're talking about conditions that haven't been established, right, you're always talking about modeling, and there's generally accepted engineering practices that help dictate, as well as new AI information modeling. And that's really what we have the professional experts in that particular field in order to provide us. So that we are dealing with, in all 3 cases, 3 unknowns. But we're basing it off of consistent modeling that's being used for all 3 of those scenarios. The second thing I was just going to ask Apex to speak to was the study or the survey that we did of the businesses, and specifically why it did not look at smaller deliveries and how the modeling works and how that was included.
Sure. So with regard, I'm gonna have a 2-fold answer. Let me just share my screen again. All right. So first, just before I forget, Eileen, I wanted to just make sure we're presenting the information in the most helpful way. In the roll plots, let me just pull those up. Not the stacked plan, but the long plan of each alternative. It actually includes the parking changes by block. So like existing number of spaces is, like existing spaces is 13 from Linden to Maple, proposed is 11. So that was kind of our way of helping folks understand where it was coming from and going to, and each parking area has the number of spaces shown. If there's a different way that we could be showing that would be more helpful, happy to kind of update accordingly.
So I have a question. If we were to vote on doing a 2-lane, which is going to require that it be a loading zone, have we addressed where those loading zones might be going?
So just to be clear, all 3 require loading zones, because what we've heard is that the way a lot of loading happens is basically by creating an illegal condition where people are double parking.
Okay.
Or they're parking in existing parking locations off cycle. So at least from a design perspective, you don't want to design a condition in which people have to do things that are not legal in order to accommodate the needs. So when we talked about it, all 3 solutions do require loading zones.
Okay, but
Where are they going?
We could, so, all right, so
the reason I ask is because if we're going to utilize parking spaces to temporarily call them loading zones, then we need to be upfront and honest with the public as to what we're doing, so it's not perceived as though we were deceptive. So that's the reason I'm asking.
Do we want to wait to get into the details of
We can get to that
located?
later. Later
yeah, we will talk about
Okay,
that.
yes.
Yeah,
I
we
just
looked
wanted
into
to-
it and are planning on talking about it today.
Question.
Yeah.
And it's related to something I think said, that is that if we're going to be taking parking places away from Brakeland Ave, which clearly somebody's doing, put them somewhere else. If we don't show where they're going, then those spaces don't exist.
Yeah.
If they're going to be moved somewhere else, counted towards this, then you need to show what's going on with them.
I
They should all
believe they
be
are
on
on
the
each
roll
roll
But
plan.
do you mind, you were just, Margo, you were just
Yeah.
showing, if you were showing us like existing ones and not like where the new
Yeah.
ones are. I'm sorry. I was gonna ask you that.
Let's take the obvious one, like from Chestnut Chapel to heading east, going past Highland and so forth.
Yeah,
It
so,
goes from 34 to 48.
yeah, so just looking at, and this is slightly outdated, but this is for the 2-lane alternative. Many of the spaces that are added in the core block are along Dedham. There are 3 new spaces added
Those
here.
parking places already exist though.
It's extended from what exists today.
Okay.
Okay.
It's extended.
So,
You can see the old curb line.
Okay.
yep, and then furthermore, for the 2-lane alternative in particular, because there is not a travel lane going to the slip lane, this is 6 new spaces right here. So that's
So it-
9 new spaces on Dedham, right
So why
next
is
to
that not on the fourth? How is it different? Why would it be different?
So on the 4-lane alternative, that's still a travel lane.
You can't put a parking lane where there's travel lanes.
What?
On the 4-lane alternative,
We
in front
have
of, in front of the common room, it's still a traveling.
There's
So,
2 travel lanes in the 4-lane alternative.
okay, so looking here,
Yeah.
this is the 4-lane
I
alternative.
was looking at the 2-lane alternative, so this is a 2-lane.
I'm saying the 2-lane hybrid, right?
So is everyone on the same page as far as?
So similarly, in that general area, the same situation occurs on Chapel Street, where it's currently a left turn only lane and then the straight right lane. In the proposed condition, it would just be 1 lane, so that left lane, left geographical bit, would then be 6 new parking spots. So when we're including new parking spots in the count, it is directly adjacent to Great Plain Ave. It's not like it's blocks away.
And they're all, I believe they're all noted on the concept designs that were
Yes.
disseminated.
Yes.
So maybe if they go into like a different form to be sent, maybe highlight those boxes as like new or like, you know, put something just like not existing before, just because.
Yeah. Or we could color code as like where it's more, where it's less.
Sure, just something to kind of make that pop.
Yep.
Go to where the new one.
And then just on the business feedback, though, one other thing I just, because I feel like there's one question in there as well, which is about the drainage questions regarding the downtown. So right now, the downtown that we have was largely developed before we had any drainage requirements for private or public development. So there's a lot of pavement and not a lot of drainage. And in August 8th, 2023, we experienced a 5-inch storm that came down in about 90 minutes and flooded locally a significant portion of the town, and about 220 homes had property damage as a result of it, as well as a couple of the businesses in the downtown. The downtown had, I think, about 3 feet of water in the Walgreens parking lot, as well as some subgrade flooding, as well as down Chestnut Street, Highland Avenue, and adjacent neighborhoods behind the hospital. So the area is not meeting current expectations for drainage, nor is it dealing with the added pressure that we have in the town of a lot of development and an older infrastructure. So the downtown itself does have flooding concerns that would be addressed as part of this project and should be addressed at some point in the next, in the next iteration of the drainage work that we do. It is also a possibility to help alleviate downstream flooding from the downtown, particularly where it bottlenecks around the MBTA, because that's a challenge that we have as we're sort of designing around the rail infrastructure as well. So does it have to be done tomorrow in order to improve drainage? It really depends on the next event that we get, the criticalness of it and where it impacts it. I will tell you, if we get an event like that, we will have flooding again. That was a 1,000-year storm, but 1,000-year storms seem to be happening more frequently. And we have had significant call from the community to make investment in our drainage. It's not the only location we could start at, but it is an area that does need to be addressed. So the sort of chicken and egg question is, do we need to do something in the next decade in drainage in the downtown? The answer to that is yes.
We're gonna talk about the deliveries.
And then just the deliveries, just can you explain the Visio model and what it factors in and what it doesn't factor in?
Vism?
Vism, yeah.
Well, I mean, the loading kind of review was a separate situation, but so we looked into kind of best practices for loading. Usually dedicated loading spots are about 40 to 50 feet long, which in terms of parking spaces would be subbed out for 2 spots. It's usually at the beginning or end of a block just to facilitate trucks getting into it and out of it. So looking at, I'm just gonna pull up that role plan again to have something to talk to. So looking at the project limits and kind of where, if we're looking at beginnings of blocks, ends of blocks, where might make the most sense for loading, we had initially thought, looking to have one that's eastbound and one that's westbound. I know both UPS and the needle store expressed a concern about loading in particular, so possibly one loading zone in this area. So that would be make the proposed spaces down to 20 instead of 22. And then eastbound, just to kind of cover both ends of the project limits. We might consider something, on this side of Chestnut Street for a second loading zone. So, I think it's too early to propose a loading zone would be right here. And that's something that we could talk to the business community about where would be the optimal spacing. Also, as I'll talk to you later, in some of the alternatives, now the 2-lane is, at least 10 parking spots more than existing. So we could easily add, 2 loading zones on Great Plain Ave, potentially looking at one on Chapel, and it would still provide more than the existing number of parking spots.
So I think the question is in the survey, we didn't ask about Amazon deliveries and short duration deliveries, and you can just explain why we didn't ask that question.
Yes, so those deliveries could be accommodated. I mean, Amazon deliveries and those kind of deliveries happen in all locations all day, every day. And they are much easier to accommodate without dedicated spaces that can fit those vehicles. If we had dedicated loading zones, obviously those vehicles could use it, but we are looking for larger vehicles. What are those needs and how do we need to especially accommodate them?
Okay, so let me just ask, so then what does it look like for UPS and for FedEx and for Amazon, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be the same condition we have on Chapel Street right now. So they either go into a parking spot that's available, they pull into a driveway, or they run out quickly and then they run back and cars go around them.
So I mean, I can tell you what they do on Great Plain Ave in front of my store is they take up one of the lanes.
They double park.
Yeah. So what's gonna happen if either of the proposed 2-lane plans move forward?
And does it?
Because they're not gonna stop doing that. They're gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, and I think it would be useful, and I know like for the business community, I think finding out how Chapel Street does function would be really useful because that is a major corridor right now for the ambulance and fire and police, as far as like that's their preferred route to get to the Heights. And just
Not
seeing
many
how they
businesses do
navigate
that.
that. No, I know, but
They're not even close.
it would be useful to find out that information as to how it gets navigated. Like they still have Amazon, they have UPS, and how that factors in. Do they block traffic? Are they doing it because they have the opportunity to do it because there are 2 lanes and they're not finding a parking spot because of that? So it's just trying to figure out like, how does it impact other locations with a similar condition?
French Press and Bagels Best, like they get deliveries on the street on Chapel Street frequently, every day.
So my other question would also.
Sorry, yeah, already.
No, let Diane.
So my next question with deliveries is also when you decide to pick where to put them, are we looking at, do those businesses already have back alleyways? Because when you're saying like go down further down the road, like my side, both my side and across the street from me, we both have off-street
Yep.
ways for people to deliver.
Yep.
Where Liz is and where Eileen are, they have nothing. So they absolutely positively need to have deliveries down that end of the street.
Yep.
I don't need it because we don't, it's not a necessity for us. And it's not that we, you know, so I just feel like we have to look at
Absolutely.
each building by building, not just block by block.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's more like identifying, we would ideally want X loading spaces within the project limits, let's figure out what the optimal locations of
I mean,
them.
just because we're looking at a project that's this long doesn't mean zoning has to be this long. Maybe only this block really needs it.
And I think in that point also is the fact that what you're talking about is conditions that won't change, like for long-term anyway, where if you have alley access
Right,
to be able to get there, even if the business changed,
right, exactly.
it
The
doesn't
alley's
matter.
gonna always be there, whether
That's
Michael's
right.
and Shoes is there or not, there will always be a back alley for a delivery.
That's right. But then obviously the spots where they don't have that access, then that becomes a more priority.
And delivery spots are not necessarily permanent, right? They can be.
They're
they
just
should
striped
be-
differently,
They're just
yeah.
striped differently, so changing them based on feedback or needs would be fairly
I just wanna,
easier.
if someone, either Michael, I just also wanna recognize Michael Grice didn't
Oh.
join the meeting, but if Michael or Eileen could just talk, we just tried to adjust the volume in here and I wanna make sure it had a positive impact.
Michael and Eileen, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm all set.
Great, it sounds better.
Thank you.
Eileen's hand raised.
Yeah, Eileen had her hand raised. Raised. I actually don't see her looking at. Sure. Oh, there we go. She must have gotten. Out and in.
Eileen, did you have your hand raised because you got kicked out or because? Here you go.
I was gonna say something. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Oh, yeah. So I was gonna say like I know you're saying to compare the deliveries to Chapel Street, but Chapel Street is nowhere near as. There's not as much traffic. There's not a train going through Chapel Street. So it's definitely gonna back up more than what Chapel Street will. And plus one side of Chapel Street has a parking lot behind it where they can get deliveries. So I don't think we can really compare it to that.
Yeah, but I see, because I sit in that parklet for French Press, and so like I've watched French Press get their deliveries there. They park on the street because they find an open space. Sometimes it's like a little bit further down and sometimes it's the other way. Bagels Best also, they find a place on the street, either the bus stop or if there's open spaces, they'll go there and they use a pallet truck, and their pallet truck their materials to the curb, and then the curb, they get a two-wheel dolly, and then they make it in from there on the curb to somewhere else. So they're certainly doing similar deliveries like the rest of the restaurants, at least the restaurants, because there's a restaurant deliveries that I see often there.
So I think for the purposes of design engineering, you don't want to design a condition where somebody has to double park. So like I said, in all scenarios, we're gonna factor in loading or unloading. And again, when we look at modeling or anything else, it doesn't assume somebody is not following the law when it comes to where they're putting their vehicle. So when we talk about like how you want to design something, obviously you want to design something where you can have everybody meet the condition of what you have in place and they're not working around the existing infrastructure.
Jim,
Yes.
couple of questions. The first one has to do with the charge of the committee. And how things fall in the committee. So I mean, every committee I've been in town, it's the committee is deciding the pathway, the charge with what we're doing in the pathway. We're taking votes on what's going on. I've seen no votes on this committee as far as what the pathway, the timing of what we're doing. The committee is supposed to be deciding that, and that hasn't been going on. I see no votes, no comments about it, just comments as far as what we had last time, what was presented, and I can appreciate that fact. But it's being told, we're being told what it's gonna be versus we decide what it's gonna be. The committee is supposed to be deciding what is going on. I've never heard of anything till the alternative, the way the committee work. And plus, and that's just how committees are. Plus, the fact is that I'm looking at the plans. Hearing the public, it makes no sense to spend any time on the 2-lane plans as opposed to spend time on the 4-lane plan and look at alternatives to the 4-lane plan, some versions of that. It seems a waste of time to look at the 2-lane plans.
Yeah,
I
so-
see no purpose in that, and that was given to us without us voting on which pathway we want to move forward.
Yeah, we were an advisory committee, select board,
We
and
vote,
the select board decided that they wanted these kind of 3 plans presented
well,
in
we,
some form or fashion.
well,
So
yeah.
we're already, number one, it's not on the agenda.
It's
so I
not,
wanna
no,
get you- I
time
wanna
out.
get
It
you-
doesn't matter if it's not on the agenda. If the committee's supposed to work, supposed to vote on stuff, we haven't voted on anything. We haven't voted on the timeline. We're supposed to vote, and we're not voting on a timeline.
Okay,
If something isn't ready for the public, it is our decision if it's ready, and it hasn't, and that hasn't been going on. And I can appreciate all the work that's going on here. I appreciate that, and I really do. Okay, but the committee's supposed to vote on stuff, and that's not happening.
okay. We're doing what the select board kind of, they voted to tell us to do this, to create 3 plans, to create a public engagement program. And that's what we're doing.
They
So we're
wanted
moving
3
on.
plans. It
So
doesn't have to be these 3 plans.
It has to be exactly these 3 plans. It's exactly how the motion that was passed at the select board hearing specifically spelled out exactly what they're supposed to do, and these 3 plans are exactly what was in that chart, in that motion.
Okay. Okay, I accept that. We're still supposed to vote. Was there a charge and it has to be done at this date? Because we're not voting on the dates, the timeline.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure, like. We're still gathering information on this, right? We're still having the plans presented to us, adjusted, and then we make it to the next step. So we're just gathering information right now.
We're not, this is being, we have little tweaks. We'll still see what the little tweaks
Yeah.
are. But it's still being told to us what we're doing and when we're doing it. So what we're doing here doesn't seem to make a lot of sense right now, because we're not deciding when it goes forward. We're just being told when it goes forward. We're supposed to decide if it's ready to move forward. If we've gone through all these and made whatever tweaks we can do to make them as best as possible, then we're ready to go forward.
I think that's what Eileen was saying in terms of it feels very rushed and how can a decision be made when like we haven't done the necessary steps to get all the necessary feedback.
We haven't even started the steps yet.
Right, so how can we say that a decision needs to be made by the select board by December if
So
we
I-
haven't even started the feedback process?
So if we do the feedback process, and we've talked about we'll get into the survey, we'll get into all the other outreach that we're looking to do. You know, there's usually only a window, like you don't want a survey open for 2 months, right? You want a survey open for it to be accurate for a certain period of time, so that way you get responses that are timely. You're not kind of getting people answering surveys with 2 different sets of information or multiple iterations. So the feedback component for the survey, you know, is sort of in itself time limited. We have talked with Apex about providing another public engagement event, which again is one event that would be somewhat time, you know, could happen in that period of time. If the committee at that point makes a recommendation that we don't have enough information to make a choice, then that's the recommendation of the committee and the date could be pushed back. I'll say logistically, from my perspective, having a lot of these issues still open, we're only at the very beginning scratching the surface about what the town would look like. Figuring out where the travel lanes are is the first element and the first step. And there are other projects that are also occurring that may or may not intersect, like the Highland Ave project that was brought up does intersect with this project. And to even really look at that project, I feel like decisions need to be made on this one because people keep conflating. It's hard enough to get people not to conflate the plan that was presented in the spring with what we're currently looking at now. And a lot of the feedback we're getting isn't about this project, it's about the project that we talked about before. So again, when we're talking about like what we were looking for from the committee, finding out how to gain feedback is really helpful because we're really trying to start from the beginning, but we're getting feedback on decisions that haven't been made yet, as far as being positive or negative. So
When is the schedule that was told us when we're supposed to hand this off to the select board?
So the goal is to get the select board to make a decision just on the travel lanes in December.
When are we supposed to hand it off to the select board?
That would be in December. But if that doesn't work and we say we don't have enough information, which that's not actually what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing that we're worried we're not gonna have enough information by December. I'm hearing we just don't like, I'm hearing that one of the alternatives we would like to take off the plate. So if you feel like you have enough information to give the select board to make a decision, then we can hand it off to them to make that decision in December. If we feel like we don't have enough information, if we feel like we didn't get enough feedback, we didn't get enough engagement, people aren't informed about it, or they're unclear or uncertain about what direction they want to go in, then I think we can talk about extending the timeline. But we haven't started the engagement yet, so I don't know if we're gonna get lack of clarity or clarity. I think the question is, do you think we'll have clarity about a direction, what the feedback is from this committee, what the feedback is from the public, so the select board can make an informed decision?
On the Large House Review Committee, which is a working subset of the planning board, we are essentially an advisory committee also. We're not dictating what has to be done. We're looking at taking all the information in, then advising, here's what we think here's where we think we're at. Then the planning board takes up and decides what to do. It may be the same, maybe a little different. Who knows what's gonna happen? So to say that the advisory board doesn't have any votes on anything, this is untrue. We have to vote on what we're doing. Now, if the select board, again, very specifically said it has to be these, okay, I suppose that means something, but still, we are supposed to decide when it's going forward and how many other changes need to take place before it goes forward. I mean, I'd love to spend more time on the 4-lane version to try to make that as best as it can before it goes anywhere, before it goes to that, for example. That way, we've done the best we can as to focus on the other ones. I suppose they have some merit, but not as far as most of the town is concerned. We should focus on the 4-lane and make that as best as it can, as opposed to comparisons to the others.
I think the select board wants all the information to be vetted. So I get you like the 4-lane.
It's not just Artie.
He's on speak. So the task is though, we have to look at and vet all the options.
Right.
So that's all it's
Fine,
like.
we'll look at all the options,
That's fine.
but we need to focus, make sure they're as best as they can.
Well, right, and
Any of the options that we pick, we will optimize for all the values that we are trying to solicit from the community is what they want. We'll optimize it for traffic flow. We will optimize it for parking. We will optimize it for curb management and how that looks. Each alternative offers us different opportunities to do those things. And that's where the changes, but no matter which one we pick, we're going to make sure that the traffic flow is optimized. We're gonna make sure that the curb management is optimized. So it's not a matter of like, one is better, or one is worse, or anything else. It's
No, one
trying-
is better to the public, but I appreciate, I do appreciate that the others offer different changes or alternatives, options, but they are also taking away lanes which take away options.
We haven't done the public engagement yet on these 3 options that are presented here. We have a public engagement that was done on a concept that isn't being presented, that didn't have the parking, that did have significant changes to other things other than the right of way. And these 3 options are different.
they were very clear.
Oh, no, I know they're different, I understand that. But we need that public engagement with
Right.
another meeting in the town hall where everyone can come and we can go through all these and make sure they're as best as they can. With knowing the fact that we could be wrong in some spots and be open to the fact that we can be wrong. You always want to be open to make the public can make things be better. But to just go to the Harvest Fair.
Can I make a correction?
And they have some, put stickers on what they like. If that's what's going on, they haven't really been through all of this. They're just seeing things which, like, if I look at, try them up. If I look at a lot of seating, a lot of outdoor dining, that's awesome. I'm putting a sticker there. Okay, I'm putting a sticker there. In some ways, that's obvious to me. But that's without knowing everything else. And they have to know that. The only way to do that is to have a public engagement at town hall again, like we have before.
So I just want to make a correction because I've heard this statement a couple of times. The Harvest Fair is not our only public engagement option, and nor is it the deciding factor in any of this. It's just a data point. So the goal is, one of the pieces of feedback we heard was that not enough people knew about the project. So the goal of the Harvest Fair is one of the opportunities to provide a broad base of the community some information about the Harvest Fair. The survey is not only happening at the Harvest Fair. I heard some feedback that there was concern that the survey was only happening at the Harvest Fair. Survey is not only happening at the Harvest Fair. In fact, the survey will not be happening until after the Harvest Fair. So that's a separate point of information that we can get. So we'll talk about that when it comes up on the agenda. In addition to that, we're talking about having an additional public outreach, probably in the format of some sort of informational session, and then some sort of, again, looking at how to have individual public outreach, I hope in a format that can be productive and helpful for providing feedback. So I think we're looking at 3 different, at minimum. That's not excluding people who are gonna write emails. That's not excluding people who are gonna call select board members. We'll get lots of information points in to help provide information, to help provide that decision making.
No, and that's great, no, as more information, the better, that's always the case, the more the better. But as far as the public engagement, the big one, we can choose, the committee can choose when we want to do that, period.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and we can choose to do that, find a date in October, find a date in November, when it is, we can choose when the best time for that will occur. And honestly, sitting here right now, I don't know when that best time is. I don't know if it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I don't know when it is. But we can choose when it is. Because we are a committee that gets to vote on stuff and gets to vote on that. Because it's part of the process.
Yeah, so the charge of the committee is advisory in its nature, in that it's supposed to be providing information. Everybody on the committee represents different constituency groups. And so it's to provide information on those constituency groups, their goals, again, to supplement the public information and outreach component of it, and then help provide some recommendations to the select board. The select board ultimately is the decision maker when it comes to how to lay it out with guidance here. But the charge was pretty prescriptive for this meeting.
Well, that sounds like I'm not agreeing with you as far as the advisory. I mean, yes, it's advisory, but we vote on what the advice is, period. That's what we do. And so I think we need to, at some point, we need to take a vote on which way we're going forward. And again, if it has to be those 3, fine. That's a charge. Fine. I'll live with that one.
So the thing.
But we need better, we need some tweaks to make things as best as they can. I think for which versions they are, they're probably getting as close as good as they can get, I suppose, concerns going on, but we need to make them better, then go to the public and get some feedback. And that needs to happen, I think.
So what I would say is, I think all 3, whatever design we end up looking at, it's not going. These are concept plans, these are not design plans. So we're not even close to the process where we are providing detailed information about all the different nuances of the project. I think we're just trying to get agreement on goals, period, before we can even figure out clarity on design. So I think that's where the public, first of all, I mean, getting public information about what the desire of the project is for goals purposes, right? I'm talking about, for me, I have surfacing challenges, I have accessibility challenges, and I have drainage challenges. But the community is the one who's gonna have to provide feedback through the conduits that we're talking about what it sees as its goals for the project. And I think things that I was looking for feedback from the committee were things like looking at the matrix and coming up with the evaluation criteria. And do we agree that that evaluation criteria is accurate or not accurate? I think that kind of information, just even clarity on what the trade-offs are, to me is, I think, helpful, because I think it's hard to have those conversations about what the trade-offs actually are on this project. Regardless of what those trade-offs are and how they're ranked in the evaluation criteria, we will obviously try to maximize the benefit in whatever design ends up getting forward with. But ultimately, it's to gather this information. Again, if we can get a clarity on just trade-offs in general, that would be a huge point of information to then provide the select board, in addition to public information about what do people prefer, what are they looking for from their downtown, what are their priorities, what are businesses looking for, what are out-of-town customers of the businesses looking for, and providing that in a package to the select board to be able to digest. So I feel like we're taking the engagement and processing information together.
And we also have a agenda item coming up soon that is discuss the survey and potential open house events in October, which is to discuss the public engagement. So
We
The
still have
public
to-
engagement is the question that you have, like, we can discuss it there, and we can.
Yeah, we still have to go over the tweaks of the plans as well. Now,
Sure.
we talk about that.
Eileen has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Eileen.
No, I have my hand raised just because I was just trying to say with Karis, like, that's what Artie was trying to say is the overall concern for the timeline that you created feels rushed. And that how can the select board possibly make a decision, you know, based on everything that was just laid out to us? It just seems like a lot of work to do before December, especially when we take into consideration MBTA, drainage, all that other stuff that we're just confused as businesses as to how this could be possibly be going so quickly.
Okay. Let's move on to the review of the traffic analysis.
Appreciate it.
This is the fun part.
What is this?
Wait. Are you doing full screen or no? No. Okay. Right, proceed?
Please.
I'll jump into the traffic analysis portion of the meeting. We had formed evaluations of traffic operations of the three alternatives, focusing in on the amount of time it takes to travel through the center and queuing vehicles, as well as identifying areas for improving efficiency and circulation. So this is the first. This is the first alternative with. Oops, one moment. This is the first alternative that we had looked at, the 4-lane configuration. That's 4 lanes in between the signalized intersections. Maintaining a lot of the lane configurations that are out there today. So the white arrows depict existing lanes that are there today. The light green arrows are lanes where there would be changes. So we can see Highland Ave is changing from what is currently an exclusive right turn lane and a shared through left to an exclusive left turn and a shared through right. On this alternative, we would be changing Dedham Avenue to allow for left turns to be made from the rightmost travel lane as well. Other than that, the existing lanes are being retained. Of course, with this sort of lane configuration, there continues to be the challenge of left turn vehicles that block through the stream of through traffic and creating backups behind those vehicles, as well as vehicles then merging into the lane to the right, impacting those lanes as well.
Before we move on to the
Yes.
other one, if you
Sure
go back
thing.
to that for a second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Again, I mean, I love, I mean, getting rid of the slip lane, creating that park lane, the extra area there. I mean, I think it has a lot of potential to it. What I'm concerned about this one is that, but I understand the challenge. It's a challenge what they're doing. The other side of the road there's Needham Music and there's another business there, and they're losing their parking right in front of it. And I understand why there's the potential or the need to move the stop lane back. I understand that, but I am concerned that they're losing their parking there. So the question is, you know, and if you shrink that curve where that slip lane is, you've already shrunk it some for where it was. If you shrink it more, or can you shrink it more? Can we shrink it more and still have the and then we can move the stop line back.
Yeah.
Then have
So-
a crosswalk.
Before we get to that, can we talk about the traffic first and then, because after that, we were gonna review the adjustments in 3, so we can talk about that.
Sure.
Next alternative is the hybrid. So this is essentially a 3-lane cross section in between the 2 signalized intersections. So we got 1 through lane in each direction and throughout eastbound, westbound, Great Plain Ave. And we have short left turn pocket lanes to allow for left turns to take place outside of the stream of through moving traffic. So this affords a little bit more space when it comes to the sidewalks. And with this configuration, however, we would not be able to have a second left turn from Dedham Avenue onto westbound Great Plain Avenue because of the single lane east-west along Great Plain Ave. And with this alternative, Chapel would be reduced down to one approach lane for straight left and right turns.
It's unworkable.
So is that not ideal?
That's unworkable.
These are all different configurations that we're looking at. They each have different pros and cons to them.
There's already traffic on the block, I'm sorry, I missed.
And then the last alternative is a 2-lane configuration where this would be the full road diet. So this is similar to the previous alternative, except it does not have those left turn bays. So we don't have a place for the left turns to stack outside the stream of through traffic. So that would impact the flow of traffic when left turns do occur. Of course, the trade-off here is, or the benefit here would be the increase in sidewalk space. So this slide just kind of summarizes the lane configurations that I just kind of went through. The number of lanes on Chestnut and Highland remain the same on all three alternatives. With these, we are retaining these exclusive pedestrian phasing at the 2 signalized intersections. This means when a pedestrian hits the push button, the intersection stops and allows for pedestrians to cross without moving vehicles, which is different than concurrent pedestrian phases where some vehicular movements occur simultaneously with pedestrians. But for safety purposes, we are retaining exclusive pedestrian phasing here. And with all three alternatives, we are assuming the signals would operate coordinated with one another. Our approach was really, for this last round of analysis, was using updated traffic counts that were performed just in September 9th. Just a few weeks ago, we just received the counts a couple weeks ago, scrambled to put together all these analyses to present here tonight. So this traffic data is updated from which was collected previously, which is about 1 year old at this point. With this round of analysis, we used a more complex, more involved software called Vism. It is based off stochastical models that look at the driver behavior as well as the influence that surroundings have on intersections and travel time. So it's a much more complicated software than what we were looking at before, ultimately identifying the amount of travel time it takes to travel through the network as well as queuing distances. I will say that the way that this analysis was performed was keeping all the traffic on the network. Now, we know that when we look at, say, considering the 2-lane alternative, it's reducing the amount of capacity going through those intersections. With that will increase delay. We know that you're reducing the number of lanes, you're increasing delay, and we, however, also know that there would be an anticipated amount of diverted traffic that would go away from this network, just based on shortest travel routes. And I'll get into that in a moment as far as what that's based off of and the commuter traffic that actually cuts through your center.
Was this done during midday as well?
Yes. So this here depicts.
Can I just confirm? I just want to make sure what I'm hearing, because I remember months ago, it sounded, maybe even not that long ago, it sounded like some thought was no change in volume. So you're saying, according to your analysis now, there will be a change in volume of traffic going through the center?
I think from the beginning, when we were talking about the road diet and taking away travel lanes going through the center, we said certainly there would be diverted traffic from the center. And the question really comes in, and I'll get into this in a moment, so steal my thunder a little bit.
Sure.
But
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. So a lot of those trips, however, are far distance trips. And it's really interesting to see that information. And there's a slide coming up.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So Artie, I think when we talked about this before, there was a question that came up from the public that was, they didn't believe that they would be diverted traffic, right? So what we wanted to do was take a look and say, all right, if we didn't have diverted traffic, what would it look like?
Right.
We anticipate there will be, but if the assumption is that we don't believe that anyone's gonna change how they move modality, then what would it look like in the downtown?
Right, that's what we're showing here. So this shows a variation of traffic that travels along Great Plain Avenue over a 24-hour period. The light green line is eastbound movements, the orange is westbound, and you can see the peaks and valleys. So the three periods that we looked at were the morning peak period fell from 7:45 to 8:45 a.m. School dismissal period from 2:45 to 3:45 p.m. and then the PM peak period from 4 to 5 p.m. So the one thing that we see here is that the AM peak is especially high. So that's why we have a few more slides on the AM focusing in on that, just because that is the critical period.
Can you go back to that for 1 second?
Sure thing.
So it's westbound is actually higher in the morning than the eastbound?
Westbound is higher in the
At
morning than the eastbound, correct?
So that means that traffic's actually coming up.
Right.
Dedham Ave. and
Yeah.
going-
I would have thought it was
Taking
the
the-
opposite.
Yeah, taking the
Okay,
left and heading
okay,
out towards
that's
Wells.
interesting.
It is, and it's quite a peak too,
Yeah,
right? It jumps way up there.
and would anybody know if that would be school related, like heading towards the,
I mean, it's
Newman and,
sound.
right? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
wanna make sure I have a thorough understanding.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'm back on that quickly. When you say eastbound, westbound, is it the full length or are people coming in on Chestnut turning
So
left?
these are basically automatic traffic report accounts that were collected on Great Plain Ave in between the two signals. So it's just eastbound, westbound,
Okay.
however many vehicles are going through there. We also
Okay.
did collect turning movement counts at these intersections, because certainly when we're analyzing the intersections, we need that data set as well.
Okay.
But this is just and that's how we have 24 hours here, is because it's the ATR, automatic traffic report accounts.
Okay, and just on that point then, so do you saying that the flow of traffic that's coming in, we'll just focus on westbound for a second, that is coming in, you can see, because Dedham Ave is one of the intersections that we're working on, right? That that you can your traffic study will show how many people are coming up Dedham Ave and turning left onto, as opposed to coming straight.
And that's
from
a big
Dedham.
movement.
Yeah.
Dedham Avenue is a big movement. So remember before I spoke about the first alternative, we added that extra left turn lane. That helps. Because if you've got two receiving lanes, you're allowed to
Right.
push more traffic through. The problem is, however, is that a lot of these vehicles, especially from Dedham Ave, and you'll see the slide later, a lot of them are coming from far distances outside of your town, and for whatever reason, they're cutting through your center. So that's the challenge,
And,
you know?
and they're not, and that would mean also that they're not utilizing the slip lane because they're going left and following Route 30.
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so although, like I said, we took a special focus in on the AM, we did analyze the school dismissal period and the PM peak as well. This chart summarizes those findings. Again, this includes all the vehicles without any diverting traffic. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. This is this shows the number of minutes it takes for a motorist to travel from 1,800 feet in advance of a stop line to get through that last traffic signal. The reason we have that distance is we wanted to make sure that we captured all the queuing for the approaches, to make sure we have that. So
Would it train, did you try to negate the train
this is
aspect of it?
without the train. This is just focusing on before the train. Okay, so the leftmost columns, the existing, you can kind of compare how the existing 4 lanes compares to the alternative 4 lanes. We're making some minor improvements in travel time, albeit small, but the more traveling, the fewer the lanes, obviously, the more delay, right? And as anticipated, when we get to alternative 3, there is substantial travel time because, again, we're assuming this analysis includes all the vehicles traveling through there before diverting those motorists.
Well, it's
And
not,
that was
it's not just,
that was minutes.
That's
too?
in minutes.
So
That's in
8 minutes, if we're the alternative,
Now,
8, okay.
I will say, yeah.
too.
So if you like comparing that 8 minutes to 2.9 minutes in the left, you see
Yeah.
eastbound Great.
Yes.
So 2.9 minutes today would go up to 8 minutes, yes. And Yeah, and even like the other side streets are also impacted. We focused in on the top three movements because honestly, they are the greatest generators of traffic entering into these intersections.
Am I reading
But
that
with-
correctly? 20 minutes?
Yes, so when vehicles, when you take out diverted traffic, when you take out those motorists that would seek an alternate route and find another way to go in, that from Dedham Ave in particular, it makes a whole difference on the whole balancing between the intersections. And that is actually the next step if we were to compare what the amount of diverted vehicles would be here, then we would see the true operations after those cut-through motorists that are traveling literally 32 miles on their way to cut through town.
Keeping in mind, we're trying not to
We don't want to.
eliminate those people from seeing what's in the center.
So I think one of the goals of having the matrix is we can say, this is the consequence of this without saying we want it or we don't want it.
Right.
It simply says this is like, so people who want it will see it one way, people who don't want it will see it another way, but as long as we agree that that's the effect, I think that's helpful.
Oh,
To
sorry.
make the
Um,
decision.
The other thing I just. Yes. So the one thing I'll just say is that, and this is fair, I think on all of the alternatives, that we're not talking about like the final design, exactly what it's gonna look like. This is modeling, so you're talking about in all one of these, there'd be, I guess I'll call it a tinker as far as how things would be
100%.
optimized. So I just wanna be clear that this isn't necessarily the finalized result, it's the, how we're comparing model to model, apples to apples.
Yes, but no, I agree that things can change, but a lot of emphasis was put on. And I understand that the scientific aspect of modeling the systems, it does have a very specific process. There is, you're talking about stochastic, I'm not sure, and I understand stochastic in some aspect, I'm not sure what the modeling is. But it does have some brains to it, it's not out of thin air.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Also note, these are the 3 worst hours of the entire day.
Yes.
So 21
Good
out
point.
of 24 hours, the results are a lot better than this.
Certainly. Okay, so these next few slides kind of go through, again, focusing in on the AM because that was the worst peak period, and focusing in on the heaviest movements, which is again eastbound and westbound, Great Plain Ave, northbound Dedham. And so under existing conditions, you can see during the morning peak hour, it takes 137 seconds heading eastbound through town, 99 seconds westbound, 161 seconds heading northbound up Dedham. The queue lengths, the average queue lengths that we're seeing here are not terribly bad, based on our observations on September 9th, which was used to calibrate the traffic models that we were looking at. If you then look at the 4-lane cross-section alternative, the travel time decreases a little bit because we are able to optimize the phasing and the timing. We added that extra lane onto northbound Dedham Ave. And so things have shortened up a little bit, including on the average queues as well. When we take away a travel lane heading eastbound, westbound along Great Plain Ave, as well as that extra left from Dedham Ave, traffic volumes, the delays increase a little bit. It takes a little bit longer to travel, especially on the northbound Dedham Ave approach. And you can see how that impacts the average amount of queues. Now we're outside of the screen here for queuing distance. And likewise, with the 2-lane road diet configuration, traffic volumes increase a little bit longer, and sure enough, queuing distances also increase. Now, again, this is with every vehicle going through the model. We're just to kind of look at a comparison on what these numbers are. So again, starting at the top, the green is the existing condition, blue is 4 lanes, white is hybrid, orange is 2 lanes. You can see that we do make some improvement when we go from the green to the blue, when we optimize the 4-lane configuration. But delays increase, travel times increase as we continue to eliminate the amount of
Question, how is on the left-hand side, what is the rationale of why white is less seconds than blue?
So to Karis's point earlier, there can be all sorts of tweaks and iterations on this. And although there are fewer lanes in the eastbound direction in the morning, it did not have that much of an effect on the eastbound movement. In fact, we made it 5 seconds quicker.
But how could it be faster if there's less lanes? If you're using the same, if you're using the same optimum traffic.
We're
light timing
dealing
and
with
stuff like
different, all sorts of phasing and timing, and what we're doing is we're trying to calibrate it to the overall best, the overall good for the majority of the vehicles.
Okay.
So every time you change one green time, it influences things. So in theory, you can see the others increase a little bit more than it does in the eastbound direction, but it's influenced by the amount of traffic as well.
Like we tried to tweak the 3 overall results for the hybrid to have the greatest good. So
Right.
sacrificing the Dedham travel time to make the Great Plain Ave travel time better. So.
And this is a comparison of the queuing distances. Just side note, you'll notice that some of these lines are staggered. That's just dependent on where the stop line happens to fall in that alternative. But certainly the fewer the lanes, the longer the queuing. Again, this is with all the vehicles traveling through. So this is the part that I was referencing earlier. You know, when it comes to looking at alternatives that have fewer travel lanes, we want to look at the vehicles that are traveling through the center. And certainly this model compares the amount of trips outside of Needham, not stopping into Needham, not starting in Needham or ending in Needham, but traveling through. And you can see that 55% of the trips are commuter trips, and 28% of the trips are longer than 32 miles. So that's pretty long distance. If you were to expand that a little bit more to look at the number of trips over 16 miles, you find that 60% of the trips cutting through are of that long distance. So pretty long trips when we're talking about visitors cutting through town and not stopping at the businesses.
How do you know they're
so-
not stopping?
So that's what this model is based off of, is it's using a replica software that's looking at trips outside cutting through Needham, not stopping.
So what data, I think the question is like where the
It's,
data point's coming from?
It's a very complicated model
It's
in
based
my
on cell phone
simplistic.
data, so it
Yeah.
identifies what the origin of trips are and what the destination of trips are.
So it'll show if they stop or they don't stop.
Oh,
That's one data
Well, that's
set.
the first I heard,
One
you
data
actually
set.
bring this from cell phone data.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier as well. A lot of it's from cell phone data.
Yeah. So what is 32 miles? Well, it's equivalent going from Dedham to Northborough. So certainly there are alternate routes that a commuter can take without cutting through your center. So that's.
Eileen has her hand up.
Okay.
She said.
Hold off again, yeah.
Oh my God. You hear me? Sorry about that. No, my concern when you see this is like you're saying 55% of the people are just going through, but shouldn't we take into consideration that that's during rush hour traffic? That's their commute. What's actually
Yes.
going on in the middle of the day when the businesses are open?
Right.
Right, correct. So we're focusing on the peak periods because that's really when the motorists would be seeking an alternate route. That's when they would be experiencing delays under the road diet alternatives, and would be seeking an alternate route. Midday, if the traffic volumes are lower and operations are better, then they wouldn't really have a reason to seek an alternate route.
Okay, so, but you're saying that these people are just going through town and not stopping in the shop, but that's because the businesses aren't open at those times. And who's to say they don't come by at a later time?
Sure.
I just think like,
Well, we could look at the PM as well, when.
well,
when
no,
the-
but my store closes at 5. So what I'm trying to say is this is somewhat deceiving to like the general public. If I saw this, I'd be very scared, thinking that people are just using us as a pass through when in reality, like this, and September 9th is not the best time for a study like this because everybody's just settling in back to school. Liz and Diane, I don't know about you, but that week is quiet in Needham Center as far as I'm concerned. Do you guys agree?
You can do the week
Yeah.
now. Now would be
Yeah.
a good time to do it.
Yeah,
But the other thing is, I think it looks deceiving because people are passing through our town and not stopping at that point in time, but when they pass through our town, they see businesses and they see things that will encourage them to come back, and if we have traffic that is so high that deters them from coming into our town, then they don't have a reason to come back at a later date. So I guess that's what businesses are concerned about, is if the traffic gets to be so long, people will avoid the center of town even on their daily commute, which then means they're not coming back in and shopping and dining with us at a later date.
So one thing we're hoping to dive into a little bit more, and because we had transitions in the economic development position, we haven't been able to, is Pacer AI data, which also then it's similar in that it uses cell phone data. We could certainly try to figure out, like, is the person, because it'll track out for quite a while how a person is behaving. And we can try to look and see, are the people who are going from point A to point B stopping or not stopping? What percentage of them are, right? Is it 5%, 10%, 2%? You know, I think that would be more helpful. I think for your concern, the question is this 55% potential customers for you or not? And I think right now we just don't have the data that indicates.
so, but I don't know about if that data would be fair, because like, we know that we're getting customers this way. And whether it's 5%, 10%, each business is different. Like, I know 5% for Liz is a much bigger impact on her business than for me. So I don't know. I'm just having a hard time with this data when I look at it, because it's really not a face value of what we're sitting here looking at every day, all day long when we're in Needham Center. But go ahead, just keep going.
Yeah, one question I would also have, and I don't know if the chamber has this or if the businesses have this, but do you know generally where your clients are from? Because if we have the 32-mile radius, are they driving from Northborough? Are they driving from
Clients
Dedham?
all over,
All over.
all those highlighted spots. I have clients coming from all over.
I'm Karis, if I can just add. So the reason why we're looking at the crush load times, the times when the traffic impacts are gonna be the worst, is because that's when we expect the diversion to occur. So when, like Jim said, during regular business hours or towards the, the sort of the middle of the day when everyone's at work or where they need to go, the diversion would be much lower, meaning that everybody that's coming through now is still coming through. So that's important to know, that's important to recognize, because we're not expecting this level of diversion throughout the entire day. We're only looking at the absolute worst case scenario. And that's why all the analysis looks like, oh, this is gonna take so much longer, because that's the absolute worst case scenario. And we're not even accounting for the diversion in that table that we looked at. So if we're talking about the middle of the day, one of the reasons why we haven't focused on that up front here is because it's gonna be the lowest, less change than the current, significantly. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at the commute times.
That
I
seems to
think
be
the-
the most congested.
The value of the question is diversion a positive thing or a negative thing when it comes to the AM or the PM commute? And I think that there's not one monolith of opinion on the positive or the negative. And so I think the question is, how do we get that information to figure out what the values are? Like, what is the importance from either like a quantitative perspective, a qualitative perspective, and then what does the community desire? And I think, again, that's where the public outreach and the survey become helpful.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, every car driving past something is a potential customer. Obviously, we do not know who they're gonna be. And I mean, in itself, it's great having that data to be able to pull that in. You know, we don't know where they're going afterwards. We don't know if they come back. They'll see the common room, they'll see farmhouse, they'll see every other restaurant in town. And we get a lot of people coming back into need for the restaurants. We have people obviously coming back into some of the stores. That's obviously the goal as much as reasonable. I mean, so, I mean, I appreciate that. It's great to kick out the people that have never stopped and need them. We just kick them out, divert around, don't come through, we're not gonna stop. But the thing is, we don't know, we're never gonna know what that is. And the customer someone that isn't a customer now is a customer 3 months from now, 5 months from now. So again, I'm not saying we want to increase the traffic through Needham. I'm not saying do that, but I don't see how we can sit here and say necessarily diverting is necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about the diversion. Is there anything in your models that? So if I'm one of these people that are going through just commuting, right? And now I'm on my ways, right? And it's gonna take me around I know that was some concern by residents. That all the traffic is gonna go by my house instead of. Do you have any data on that and what that might look like?
We provided that on the road diet model when we first looked through it, and they had the number of vehicles in each alternative. I think that wasn't something we specifically asked for this particular meeting, but we are meeting next week. We can talk about what we provide, so.
I will say, depending on what the origin and destination of a trip is, for the vast majority of trips, Waze will not send you, going down a local road will not be the next fastest route.
Okay.
So.
Waze will put you right through the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right through the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's gonna throw you up Maple Street, whatever, down Oak Street or, somewhere down that School Street to Dedham Ave.
If that is actually faster than going around.
It will do that if it's a short trip, but not if
If
you're
it's a
going.
short one.
So the long distance.
Yes.
Long distances.
This is an example
Which
here,
they
is what they're showing right here.
Right.
They use Google Maps at some point and it gives you the 3 different times for each different trip, which you can do like pretty frequently with Google or even Waze to look at the different ones and which ways it will go. And you'll see that someone from probably Dedham over there, they have the option of going through Needham Center, and that's one time, and then they're gonna go around 2 different ways. So you can see kind of where it would be here. One would be 135 all the way through, and one would be down South Street, which there are diversions that are being done today as the current condition exists.
I mean, that I get in terms of like the long drives, but when you're talking about, after school activities, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's tons of businesses that do after school activities. How are parents gonna get their kids to these activities if they can't get through the center of town? It's gonna take them 20 minutes to get to the center of town.
Again,
So that's where the diverted traffic comes from. So the goal
Right, they're gonna
is.
go into the side streets.
No, so the goal is to divert the traffic onto the major highways, because right now it's a little bit faster to go through Needham Center than it is to go on Route 9 or it is to go on the Pike. So instead, the goal would be to reserve the space that we have, regardless, if you want to divert traffic, the goal would be to reserve the space for the people doing those local trips and not competing with the regional transit people.
Not gonna happen.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't know how we create that.
Yeah.
It's not gonna.
So if someone's commuting for an hour and a half, they're gonna behave differently than somebody who's making a 3-minute trip from their home.
Yeah.
And so if now we're going on Route 9 or the Pike is the same or faster than going through our downtown, they're gonna choose to go on the Pike or they're gonna choose to go on Route 9.
I can appreciate, I certainly appreciate that, but I don't necessarily want to do that.
That's the question, and I think that's the question.
Yep. So aside from changing the travel route, when we alter capacity intersections, there are other things that can shift as well. Mode shift, for instance, is another thing that could happen with walking, biking, transit users, as well as time of day that people opt to make their trips, ultimately balancing out operations over time. This slide here is from our previous evaluations that we had looked at, again with the replica data, but it kind of shows you the amount of trips on Dedham Ave in particular that are trips that are over 32 miles and cutting through town. So it's a substantial amount of traffic on Dedham Ave in particular, as well as, and then the second most would be Great Plain eastbound, would be another heavy place where there's a lot of cut through traffic cutting through here. So in the end, again, 60% of the trips are greater than 16 miles, pretty lengthy trips, and 55% of the AM trips are work related. With the alternate routes, what we would anticipate if there were to be something that reduces the amount of capacity in the center, we would anticipate there to be alternate diverted traffic. Excuse me.
You ignored Highland Ave and Chapel Street, how come?
What?
Traffic on Highland Ave, going Chester.
On this one here?
Is there a reason why you did?
So, not really, this one, Highland Ave has fewer cut-through vehicles, same with Chestnut and westbound Great Plain Ave, based on our evaluations.
Well, that's because sometimes they'll go down Garden Street with all the versions to get over to Highland Ave.
So they're avoiding those streets to begin with. Yeah.
And then
so-
Chapel too, because you're changing Chapel on here. So is there any information on Chapel?
No, but we can add that in. Again, this was from an earlier evaluation, but if we were to calculate the amount of diverted traffic that we would anticipate in the model, then that would balance out as well, and understanding what the actual operations would be on Chapel. So.
Chapel already backs up the way it is.
I guess that was the end of the traffic portion. Are there any other questions on that content?
No. So we move on.
All right, so I provided updated plans, and I will stop the PowerPoint to go through that as well, but just a quick summary of the tweaks we made to the 3 plan alternatives since our last meeting. Obviously received a lot of feedback that adding a few parking spots in front of Town Common would be worthwhile for the 2-lane alternatives. So that we were able to provide 5 additional parking spaces on the hybrid and the 2-lane. It was already there in the 4-lane, so that parking count didn't change. There was also some feedback to, at the Pickering Ave intersection, have all of the alternatives have the same type of curb bump out. The hybrid had a slightly smaller one just to match the existing number of parking spaces, but because we're adding parking in front of Town Common, that wasn't necessary. So that tweak was made. There's 1 less parking spot in the hybrid in that area because of that change. So
May I ask you a question on that specifically, that what you're talking about? So you made the bump outs the same, so near Pickering and Great Plain heading to the east side of that intersection.
Yeah.
There's a big bump out there, there's no sidewalk there right now, and we've lost a parking place. Does the bump out have to be that large? When we've lost a parking place, if there's no crossing there, no crosswalk there.
I can bring up the
Yeah,
plan
you
to
can
talk
bring it-
about
you
that
can bring it up,
further.
bring it up.
But with those design changes,
That
as
was a specific request.
But there's no crosswalk there.
There isn't, but
No, well,
bump out enlargement was requested.
it's something to talk about.
so the new parking totals with those changes, the 4-lane has the same number as existing. All these counts are with no loading zones, dedicated loading zones incorporated.
You say Highland Ave TIP line work shown.
Yep, so there was some
Right.
confusion in the last meeting on the 3rd out of the 4 sheets.
Yeah.
We're showing the line work from the other project
Mhm.
shown on all of the alternatives, because the intent would be, the assumption is that that project would be moving forward regardless of what alternative.
I can appreciate that, but that note makes it sound like we're now showing them. Are you saying we're now showing them or taking them off?
It is shown now in all of the
On
alternatives.
Highland Ave?
I don't see any.
That's a big gray square. I think. It's a big gray square.
Oh,
No,
it just
they go
didn't,
first.
it just didn't
I think the
plot
one you sent
correctly.
to us earlier
Sorry.
is correct.
On the PDF, on the computer, it will show up correctly. It's just the printing issue. All right, so hybrid is net, +4 parking spaces, and then the 2-lane, again, as I mentioned, there are a few spaces added on Dedham and Chapel, that is bumped up to 110 parking spaces. Let me just switch to plan view real quickly. See what those handouts were supposed to look like. So these are the handouts. You can see on the computer screen, the Highland Ave tip work is shown. So this is what will be shown on the website, and should be referenced. So, you can see in the 2-lane and hybrid, these are the 5 added parking spaces in front of Town Common. And then in front of Pickering, you can see all of the bump outs are on the same
So
space.
that's where the question was about the bump out there.
Correct.
There's no crosswalk there.
There's no
So
crosswalk
there's no
there.
crosswalk, yet that's to the east of that intersection and that T.
Yeah.
So why is the bump out that large and we're losing a parking place there?
So if you looked at the, and I can pull it up real quick, the, previous version.
I think because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
When the cars are taking a right onto Pickering, you can't see, and there's so many kids crossing.
So you can see
That's the reason.
how we had shown it before. This bump out is pretty much nothing. And the bump out, even though there's not a crosswalk there, having it not be pavement does provide a traffic calming effect. So having a bump out in advance of the crosswalk is a safety improvement.
And a parked car would block the view of the
Right.
the motorist taking a right, that there might be a kid there.
It's a design improvement. It's only net, 1 spot.
I think that'll also prevent the U-turns that happen constantly.
And again, these are concepts, so when we actually like get to a finalized design, we can tweak it out, bigger bump out, smaller bump out.
Yeah.
That's flexibility that's built into any of the alternatives.
I think the intent is to just have all of the alternatives be the same at this location, and if there's a decision to change whichever is preferred, we can do that. Looking forward. All right, so those were the design changes from last time. Go back to PowerPoint.
I think that's a very valuable point in terms of like, why would we not get larger? Because from a safety standpoint, you can turn and you can't see a child stepping in the crosswalk. That's why facing the space more. But, and the other is too, is if throughout some of the traffic, common control pieces that we do, that it creates a situation where it highly discourages U-turns in the middle of the street, which, as Paul said, happens all the time. And I know that police officers periodically go out there and tag as many as they can, and they try to do what they can.
This morning.
They were tagging today.
Yeah.
The best way to discourage behavior is to prevent it physically and not force it.
Yeah, but I know they put the cone with the know your turn sign.
They got ran over. Doing a U-turn.
So yes, anything we could figure out how to do that. Would be great.
And, or just to be clear, so there are no loading zones in any of these plans, because that comes later. You add those in, but even if we went with the 4-lane alternative, loading zones are going to be placed in here because you're not going to continue to allow double parked vehicles no matter how many lanes there
That
are.
would be the recommendation.
And so there will be parking loss due to loading zones
In
that
the
are going to be
4-lane
required.
In the 4-lane alternative.
Okay.
And parking, loading zones aren't necessarily a 24-hour parking prohibition, correct? Like, we're not talking about, parking, we're not, right? There's like a whole slew of different regulations that we can discuss or.
Well, I was just gonna ask, does the
Preview.
town have any bylaws about what loading zones can look like?
We would need a traffic regulation, that would dictate how that gets used.
Why was it stated that the loading zones are only relevant to the 4-lane? I just heard that.
They would only result in a net loss in parking for the 4-lane.
Because you still can't double park.
Yeah.
Not supposed to.
So I have a question, and it's just kind of trying to help myself understand. We're adding a crosswalk down by Maple Street. Right now, so when you go to the existing to what is going to be anticipated.
So they're moving a crosswalk. So the crosswalk right now is on the opposite side of
No,
Linden?
not that one, the next one down. So I now understand why we moved the one at Linden, and that makes 1,000% sense to me.
I think that's just the thing there.
But if you go down to Maple,
I don't think there's an existing.
there's not an
there's
existing
not an
spot
existing
there.
yeah. It was just paved over when you took the road of this, but there is
Yeah.
one here now.
So there, we would recommend having bump outs regardless of whether there's a crosswalk, so.
But the reason I'm asking about the crosswalk is because people, it's kind of a small space for people to stop twice, cars that are traveling. So if I wanted to cross in front of Camilla's and then someone else wants to cross in front of the mobile station, that's a very short distance for a car to have to stop and stop. And the through streets are very minimal traffic, so somebody could easily walk across. And my other thought was, will people think it's like downtown where you can cross at the diagonal? Cause now we've got them accustomed where there's a 4. And I'm just something I was thinking about when I looked at the plan, like, does it make sense? Do we need it? And what's going to be safest for the pedestrian?
That's something we can definitely take a look at.
I do think though, that no one assumes that any of the other crosswalks, except the 2 red zones in the center, are 4-way diagonal crossing.
I mean, I think people cross where they cross. I hear what you're saying.
They jaywalk.
Yeah.
But nobody assumes that you've got a 4-way crossing in any of the ones except for the right center.
Very rarely in downtown do that.
And so the matrix
All right, yep.
changes, yeah.
Yep,
Well, this is when I started to bring up that intersection of Grapeland and Devon. If we go back to that, please. I'd like to talk this through. See what possibilities are.
okay, so the location, the radius of this curb and the location of the stop bar were currently dictated by the anticipated vehicles we want to accommodate to make it right, so.
Yeah, no, and I can appreciate that, and I understand the math, the logic, the geometry of it. The question is, if that bump out is pushed closer to the spoon, how does that change? And then that will change where that stop has to be, but it also increases the sidewalk going from that spot over to the other sides. So again, the question is there anything that can be done to save 1 or 2 parking places at that in front of Needham Music? Because now they're just gone. I mean, it's right there. It's always been right there on the center town. Boom, it's right there, but now they're gone. The parking places are gone. So what can we do? Can we do anything to save 1 or 2 of those?
Leave it as is.
I don't know, like, obviously, if we kept the slip lane, those could be accommodated. We looked at tweaking the radius slightly and how that would change things one way or another, and there's not a dramatic, it's still a pretty tight area for a larger vehicle to maneuver. So I don't think if we made a slight tweak, it would magically bring the stop bar up.
So if we go back, and I understand it increased the length of the sidewalk, so I can appreciate the challenge here.
I do, yeah.
If we bring it back 10 feet, what does 10 feet do, for example?
I do just want to be cognizant, we have a couple more agenda items.
I understand that, but this is important. That's important.
So I think the question is, like, broadly, these are larger concept plans and we're talking about like more design specific. So the question is, can we tweak it out?
Well,
But that design is gonna
that's
go to add
what
an extra
we're
parking
here
spot.
for. That's what we're here for now, is to talk about some of these tweaks.
So if I'm not mistaken, and I think all 3 alternatives, those parking spots are not there. Is that correct?
Well, yes, and some of them, more spaces are gone. Yeah, some of them,
Right.
yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is for the purposes of trying to get data about how people want the travel lanes to flow, is that a critical information point where people are going to decide on one scenario versus another? Or is that something that could get further down in the design process when we're actually like designing something as opposed to just coming up with concept plans? So I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. I guess I'm questioning, is this the right time?
Can it be done later down the line? Sure. Anything can be done later down the line. I appreciate that. But I have a question about it now. I'd just like to get a little more information as far as what happens What change has to occur to grab another parking place down there? That's what I'm asking.
If you'd like us to look into that, I can give a
What change would that would be necessary to bring another parking place back? Because I know it's possible, just is it practical? Or if it's possible, what other challenge does it create? Is it going to create another challenge? But is that other challenge acceptable?
You
That's
wanna
what I'd
keep,
like to
you wanna
find out.
keep the slip lane gone and
Yeah.
accommodate this other.
Yeah. What can be done, one or two, keep one or two of those. I'd like to do something to save these travelers' business.
All right, just quickly going through, there were a couple of changes to the matrix that are reflected in your handouts, but I'm just highlighting any changes in red in the PowerPoint. So no changes to the safety category. If you look at the mobility and access category, we tweaked this one to be specifically for non-motorists. We thought in kind of messaging different categories, that would be easier to understand and kind of prioritize than every mode lumped together. And then the curb management efficiency is,
Right.
it's just not in red. It's the same content though.
No, it's not here. No, I don't have anything. Talking about.
None of the
right here.
So keep going through like these.
I don't have those categories.
It's the
About
second
traffic
one.
stress.
It's the second block down on the first page.
Okay.
It's column over.
Yeah, there's just, each
Yeah.
category is a different
Oh, I know.
slide, so.
You're
it's
taking a
not-
left column, and you're taking a left column, so there's a.
Yeah.
Headline.
That's good.
All right, so curb management efficiency, you can see we kind of double consider that twice in both curb management efficiency and business accessibility, because when we're talking about curb management at this point, it's really regarding loading and access for businesses. So to keep this category kind of focused on those out of their vehicle, we took it out of this category. All right, the traffic category used to be labeled traffic impacts because all of the other categories are kind of goal oriented. We just renamed this to traffic flow so that when we're asking people to prioritize different categories, it has more of a positive connotation than a negative one. And then we also just updated the metric names to indicate that when we're saying one alternative is worse than the other, we are looking at the values during the peak hours. Next is economic development. You can see that business accessibility category. We had originally in the last meeting just counted them all as 0 because we hadn't looked at loading yet. We did at this point consider the 4-lane to have a net positive impact given the improvement in traffic flow and the potential to add dedicated loading zones, whereas the other two alternatives, while we could provide a benefit in terms of loading zones, it would probably be negated by traffic implications. So we gave those a 0. Next, streetscape and urban design, there were no changes to that category. Sustainability and resilience, looking at stormwater BMPs, those were originally ranked as 0, 1, and 2 for the 4-lane, 2-lane and hybrid. It was brought up last meeting that really all of the alternatives have some stormwater benefit. That's one of the reasons we're doing this project. So we changed the scale to have the 4-lane be +1, and then the hybrid will be fairly comparable to the 2-lane, so we give that a +2. Vehicle emissions, as we talked about in the last meeting, it's really hard to actually say what the emissions impacts of different alternatives are. So we're just proposing to eliminate that category. And then cost and implementation. So we had a separate category for right-of-way and utility conflicts. Really we don't expect right-of-way conflicts for any of the alternatives because the work will occur from building face to building face, which is within the public realm. And utility conflicts we felt could be absorbed into the constructability category because it is really a constructability issue. So just combine those two categories. And then for constructability, I think we previously had the 2-lane and hybrid as -1. We just kind of set those as 0 because we don't expect significant constructability issues with any of the alternatives.
Who's gonna see this? Like, how's this being presented? Who's has access to
So
this?
the goal would be to provide information to the general public about the trade-offs of each alternative. And then also to provide the select board the information about the trade-offs between the.
I feel very strongly that this shouldn't be going out to the public. I think when you're looking at things like 0, +1, -1, automatically people are just going to look at the columns with the pluses. And maybe not necessarily, and I think it's kind of like it's an opinion piece. I don't think there's a ton of like study to this. Like there's no concrete data for some of this. A lot of it's just opinion based or what you think is gonna be. So I just find like giving this out to the public to look at is risky, and I'm not supporting that.
So I guess my question would be, how would we?
I don't think you need to give them the matrix. I think we can show them the plans. I think we can ask for feedback. I think we can talk about the pluses and minuses, but I think giving them a matrix like this where they can visually look, oh, well, of course I'm gonna go with the one that has all the positives. I just think that that's.
I don't think any of them have all the positives.
It's a public document already.
I just, but I wouldn't like bring it to Harvest Fair and have people looking at it, like, I just.
Yeah, I don't think our intention was to do that, but I think the goal was to try to establish, because I agree with you, because I struggle with this as well, as far as weighting, value, that sort of thing. But I guess we tried to, and if there's assistance you can provide and how to be as neutral as possible with the language, like when we talk about diverted traffic. For some people, they might see that as a positive because they see less transit traffic going through our downtown. And for others, it's a negative because there's less people coming who might see, and come back here. So I think that there's a question of values as it fits to each one. And so that's why we didn't rank them. That's why we didn't weight them. That's why we didn't sort of provide a pro or con. Like some of them are more expensive. Some of them are cheaper. Some of them have more disruption. Some of them have less disruption. Some of them have more sidewalk. And I think we talked about how regardless of which alternative we pick, we're going to try to maximize pedestrian safety. We're going to try to maximize, other opportunities for public space gathering or outdoor dining, but how do you help people understand the differences and the trade-offs between each one of the alternatives?
Visually.
But if they don't know crossing distances, for example, or they don't know potential pedestrian vehicle conflicts, like that's hard then to say visually how they would know or not know what the trade-offs are.
I don't know, I just.
Again,
I have
it's a public document, it's in, you're gonna be in all our documentation. I mean, I don't necessarily submit, again, more data is better than less data, but in this particular case, again, it's obviously it's our, our best estimate of what those numbers would be, best estimate of what those numbers would be. Especially even your best estimate, but again, I don't necessarily think there's a lot of value going to the public and saying, please take a look at this document, give us your feedback related to this. And I don't think it needs to be sent out to them, so they give us feedback for this particular thing.
I don't think it's to give them, I think the question is, or how do you contextualize it for somebody looking at the project who's not looking at it in as depth as we are, or as much information as we are, to understand in a quick way what the trade-offs are. And we had talked at the beginning, 4 or 5 weeks ago, that evaluation criteria were one of the points of information we were going to collect and use for information. I guess I would ask, is there any phrasing or, because I understand like somebody just adds up the points and that's like what they get, but I might not value the same thing someone else values. So I'm not sure if I'm hoping it's not as clean as that, but if it feels like it's
Well, that's what's gonna happen.
leading or important, but again, it's just, it depends on what the value is, right? And so all of them that we're doing, we feel like are constructible, safe, everything else, it's just some have benefits that others don't, and there's trade-offs across all three of the designs.
Part of the charge that the select board voted on this motion for us to do was to kind of evaluate, direct the staff and the consultant committee to evaluate each plan for its impact on traffic congestion, parking, bike safety, pedestrian safety. This is one way for us to say each plan does this thing to traffic, it does this thing to bike safety, it does this thing to traffic flow, it does this thing. I think we kind of came up with this somewhat on our own as a committee. We helped develop these things and how we were gonna score them to be very neutral as best we could, right? So objectively looking at all those different things that we were asked to look at and present them, and the select board can have it goes to them mostly so that they can look at it and evaluate each different thing, because they're probably not thinking about all the other things that are. So, and that's what they asked us to do.
Eileen had her hand raised.
I understand. Hi, thank you. I understand the select board is asking for evaluations. However, Karis, you keep saying these plans aren't finalized yet. Is this fair to like show this to the public, these evaluations on plans that aren't finalized yet? Again, it's very leading, and I just don't think it's necessary to bring these to a harvest fair or to bring them to an open house until everything's finalized. You know, you're concerned with them wanting to know how far apart crosswalks are, put it on the plan then. Like, I think this looks like a grading system and is very negative towards the 4-lane plan.
Yeah, it is. When you have it as just like straight up zeros, like for the majority of it, it does. It looks like we're not doing anything.
So 0
You're
is an
evaluating a plan that isn't even done.
Like similar to existing, which is largely the intent of the 4-lane is to be as similar to existing as
But
possible.
when you have pluses on all the others,
But maybe
that's what comes across.
could we just, instead of writing 0, write no change?
Or
Right,
how about no matrix at the?
yeah, or just like,
No change,
yeah, no
no-
change.
You know, so if we
I
look
just
at,
think-
you
I
know,
think
the
it's
crossing
scoring
distance,
system that's
your
throwing.
crossing distance with a 4-lane is good. And you could say the 2-lane and the 2-lane with the slip are slightly better.
I mean, I think people can look at the.
If there's no
plans and
change,
make
just write no change.
So what
Like,
I'm hearing is language versus numbers.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
people
exactly. I
can
think
look
the
at-
numbers are just, it's throwing. It's-
Yeah.
Do you think no change, better, best would be
No,
less
I
leading?
think
I think
No.
no matrix.
words, like
Yeah.
more language around, like what exactly is it that's changing in each of these scenarios? Like, what is it? So if it's no change, okay, it's no change, but if it's in the 2-lane hybrid alternative, where, like, why is it that the speed is, like, why? The whys behind these numbers.
So like if we say narrow lane, but I guess the question is, we have to figure out how to do that in a shorter way.
Yeah, I guess that was the intent of the scoring description of what
Right.
does a 0 mean?
But I do think 0 is a negative.
Yeah, it is.
And
Very negative.
Have like just a dash, I don't know.
Well, I think -2 to me is again, if that's a value you have,
Right.
-2 is the lowest you can go, not 0, but I understand that it's not clear unless you're looking specifically for
Like the whole
that.
thing.
What if we moved it to 1, 2, 3 instead of
No, no.
1, 0?
No, I just think it needs to be language. I think it needs to give you a little, and I understand what you're saying, like you don't want to have a paragraph in each column. I totally get that. But I just think there needs to be a little bit more for people to like understand, like what's changing? Why is it changing? Why would this be beneficial? Why would it not be? Like, there needs to be more.
So we're talking about something like speed, for example, like, I don't think we need to go into a whole, like, engineering principle of
Yeah.
why narrowed lanes equals slower speeds. I think,
Right.
can we
Slower
just
speeds.
say slower speeds?
Right.
So that, okay,
Exactly.
Yeah.
okay,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's, I wanna go there. Thank you. I wanna go there. Okay.
So we'll revisit.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to
Should I just keep going?
Yeah, keep on.
Okay, so next we have the draft content for the harvest fair, which you can see the matrix is not part of this package. So first was kind of mimicking the timeline that Karis shared at the last meeting of you know, and it doesn't associate dates with any of the stages, but what are we trying to figure out right now? And that's, what is the actual pavement portion of the roadway going to look like? How much between building to building is going to be dedicated to cars versus other uses? Then once that is figured out, all the space that is not dedicated to the roadway, how could that be best utilized? Is it, you know, plantings? Is it seating? Is it, you know, maximizing parking, et cetera? So that's not the stage that we're at. And, you know, as Karis has mentioned, like if it's the 4-lane that's chosen to move forward, then how is that sidewalk space best utilized and best optimized for that alternative? Go ahead.
Can I make just one comment? Cause I heard there was some confusion about like, if we choose, I think there was like a confusion, like if we chose the 4-lane alternative and then we wanted to add a bike lane, that we'd lose a lane again. So I want to be clear in sort of the iterative process we're looking at where the cars travel. That once the decision is made is where the cars will travel. We're not going to encroach on that in order to accommodate the other uses. So if it's a bike lane, we have to figure out, you know, where between parking and the storefront where a bike lane can fit. If it's outdoor dining, we have to figure out between where the travel lane is. We're not going to, I think there was a concern that if we settle on the 4-lane and then someone wants a bike lane or there's an interest in a bike lane, then we would then take that lane back again. And that's not the plan moving forward. So the goal is really to set clearly where the travel right of way is and then look at the parking bump outs to the storefront. So we're not gonna go backwards once we've made that decision.
So just to clarify, if we decide on the 4-lane plan, the parking stays the parking, that's not gonna be then turned into a bike lane.
No, so if we go into the 4-lane plan, then the conversation is how do we use the rest of the space? And that's the conversation about parking, because we have to decide if we're gonna have parklets for outdoor dining, permanent extensions for outdoor dining. Are we gonna have, you know, what are the other uses that could possibly be there for the existing right of way, the width of the sidewalk? What are the goals of the rest of the project? So right now we're trying to determine what is the goal for the traffic flow? What is the goal for the space that cars are driving? And then the second phase is what are the goals for everything else? And so you could have all the parking, or you could have some trade-offs between other amenities. I think struggle with this project is the right of way is just so constricted and so narrow that it's all zero sum, right? You pick something, you don't get something else. And so we have to figure out what are the things we want to pick? What are the goals? So the first thing is how much space really do we want to have to pick from, which is the right of way. Well, the road itself will tell us 2 lanes, 2.5 lanes, or 4 lanes. We'll say how much space we have to pick from for the other amenities. And then we pick the other amenities.
And that amenity is just on the sidewalk.
It's from the parking lane over to the front of the building. Because what we're trying to demonstrate with this is how much parking you could put in the project. And we could say parking is the #1 priority value, that's exactly the number of parking spaces that go in there. But if there's a mixture, and I can't imagine it's not gonna be like, someone's not gonna want a bump out or some dining space or something, then there will be a trade-off for parking, particularly in the 4-lane scenario, because you don't have as much space to work with.
Goes right back to May 10th.
I mean, just a little confusion in some of the comments. So I mean, I appreciate you saying grant bike lanes, and if some people along the decision pathway don't want them, but I also heard that, you know, if it's a 4-lane, then there's some sidewalks, but the lanes are not gonna change. There's 0 space for bike lanes. So if there's 4
So I'm not saying this is what we'll do, because I'm skeptical that it would happen, but if there was an increasing overwhelming demand for bike lanes, they're talking about doing it right now in Wellesley, it's parking lanes. So I'm not saying this is what we would do or what we would encourage, but that's where it is. It's the same thing for outdoor dining. If you want to outdoor dining, the only place you have to go is the parking spot.
Yeah, but that's outdoor dining for this one spot, not.
True, so there's like different amenities. So it's not the parking for the purposes of looking at where we want traffic to flow is showing what you can build out. And then when we're looking at what actually gets built out, there's then the decision tree of what are the highest values. And if parking is the #1 value, we've established exactly where all the parking is. If it's systemic, like we want to change it for this amenity or that amenity, we have that option as well. What I'm saying is we wouldn't encroach on the travel lane in order to accommodate that. So the travel lanes, once we've decided that's where we want to go, are fixed. So there's no going back and saying, oh, we want to add more things, so there we're gonna narrow the travel lanes. We're gonna establish that those travel lanes are fixed.
All right, next boards, there's just a, survey of how folks got to the Harvest Fair on Sunday, and then how do they typically get to Needham Center. And for all of these boards moving forward that have stickers will, be giving 2 stickers for every person, so they kind of have to pick, one option.
Road closed that day.
Pickering will be closed.
That's why we said the typically get here, so it's not skewed.
But it says, how did you get here today?
Yeah, it's on the top and bottom, so they'll put 1 sticker on the top and 1 sticker on the bottom.
Okay.
Next one, so these are looking at stage 1 and stage 2. So stage 1 is figuring out the travel lanes. And these 6 columns correspond to the 6 categories in the evaluation matrix. So as I talked about traffic, these are all kind of goal oriented. What is your top priority?
What does it read under economic development? What does that say? I can't read it. Okay.
So here, what's your most important consideration, and then what is your least important consideration? And again, people will be given 2 stickers to put 1 on top and 1 on bottom.
Under economic development, should it also be listed? Like a phrasal, customers, sounds business.
What do you?
Supporting business needs such
Business
as,
and customer
such
needs,
as diversity,
delivery zones and outdoor dining.
zones and outdoor dining, as opposed to, I don't know, more customers.
Confused on what that
I'm
means.
not sure how to phrase it
So
exactly.
you're just saying something about economic development, drawing, I mean, maybe it could just be something as simple as like drawing people to the downtown.
Yeah, attract
That
people to the town.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't know how
Question in.
outdoor dining.
Yeah, we can work.
Also phrase it.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously
And then the stage 2 board, again, once the amount of space dedicated to non-vehicular uses is identified, how does the community want that space used? Pretty self-explanatory, but this wouldn't affect really our decision-making in the immediate future, but good to know once we get to that stage. That's it for the board.
Yeah, and the goal is that this is not like a definitive decision making. This is exactly what we're gonna design at. It's just an information point about we did a public engagement and this is the feedback we received. I think the most important goal of this is to get as many people aware of the project as possible, aware where we are in the process as possible, because I still think there's a lot of public confusion about what we're looking at, what phase we're in, and what we're trying to sort of restart.
I think Eileen wants to say something, but we can't see her because.
I just promoted her again.
Eileen, you can speak if you're. You're muted.
She says I keep getting kicked off the panelist.
Okay, it's not my wireless. I'm not sure why I keep getting kicked off as a panelist, but it's okay. My hand was not up.
Okay. That's it for the board. If there's no more comments, we can move to the draft survey.
Who's working this? Like, who's at the booth?
I'm literally doing it here.
No, on the day of the harvest.
Oh, on the harvester, sorry. Apex will be at the booth.
Don't you think maybe there should be someone else there too?
And we can have a town person there.
I'll be there for at least a portion of the day, so.
And we're right next to the DPW table, right there.
We are right now, I believe so. We'll confirm. Are we right next to the DPW table?
Oh,
let me confirm.
They don't let me place anybody, but, the town is all along the wall.
Yeah, I'll confirm that we're next to each other, but we will have a town booth there as well, and we should be next to each other.
I will say under the economic development, I do hear what you're saying, is something like supporting business needs, like for maintaining easy customer accessibility, like customers should be in there somewhere, you know, delivery zones, outdoor, and outdoor dining is kind of a different, so if who's ever helped, I don't know,
So-
is that, Margo, is that you? doing
Yeah,
that?
I guess the intent is to have what feedback we get here mimic the weight given to these categories. So like, it's almost like traffic flow, that's where customer access is reflected. So maybe updating the traffic flow description to say minimizing the disruption of flow of traffic of customers and residents. Because if you're looking for people to prioritize that, that's where you would want them to do so. Does that make sense?
I think it's the
gotta be
economic development, just,
too.
it's economic development, which is unclear.
I guess, is it the title of that? That's.
Well, no, economic development, things like the support of businesses, right?
Business
Yeah,
success.
business success.
Business
So
success.
there needs to be
Business
something,
success.
it doesn't have to do with
Business
our
success.
delivery zones and outdoor dining, it has to do with customers being able to come into our businesses and shop.
Whether you're a dining business or.
Yeah, or retail business,
Yeah, maybe we should say business success, or something like that.
yeah, just.
So, I mean, I guess would we want the matrix, like, the 4 categories under economic development are parking supply, business accessibility, outdoor dining, and foot traffic increase.
So I guess it would be something that
Foot traffic.
reflects foot traffic
Yeah.
and parking as well, maybe.
Yeah.
But we can just figure out how to wordsmith it.
Yeah.
Just whatever the 4 things are there.
Tim, I need just a clarifying
Yeah, so
question.
sorry,
No,
Eileen
no.
had her hand up for,
Oh, Eileen, I didn't realize that. Okay.
On stage 2, the Needham Center experience, there's nothing in there about economic development or stores or vibrant business for small stores. Can something be added for that?
So would there be something like,
Doors, diversity or diversity of store fronts?
So I guess the goal of this board is if, you know, when there is a preferred alternative identified and we're looking to identify a couple options of how the sidewalk space could be used, these are options for how to use that space.
So that's not very clear as like,
It should say which feature would most positively affect your experience in Needham Center.
right, like,
How
as-
would you
like,
like-
to
How
me, if I
do you want your sidewalks to look?
Sure.
yeah, if I were looking at a board, that's not what I would get out of that. Yeah, it really needs to be put into layman's terms. This isn't like we're not all engineers, so to me, it's just like eliminating an entire subject.
Tim, I need a clarifying question. Yeah. Gotta go backwards, on the slip lane again, the question I have is this, what does the existing slip lane allow now? Because, I mean, it has a certain radius, but it also has that island right there, so what can even negotiate that, the existing one? I'm not saying we wanna make it worse.
truck movements can,
Well, what size trucks?
it would be like a semi, because
Large truck.
that's what goes
A
through.
semi can go through that slip lane?
I believe so, because that's the only conduit, because Great Plain, there's a truck exclusion on the Greendale exit, so the Needham exit on Dedham Ave is the exit that most semis take to get into our downtown.
So the truck exclusion, let me just make sure I understand where they go. So there's a truck exclusion on Greendale Ave. So
On
what's that?
the exit on Great Plain that goes towards Greendale, there's a truck exclusion.
Okay, so those trucks are gonna come all the way down
They go down
to
to,
the center of town.
Yep.
To then take a right to go back on Great Plain Ave towards Webster Street.
yes, that's where the deliveries for those businesses come from.
Okay, so they are, okay,
Yeah.
so they are doing that,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
That's the point. Thank you.
Shifting to the townwide survey, I don't know, first we can talk about just logistics. The intent is to hopefully have this up have it live by Harvest Fair, so we can.
I think we're gonna be at least a week out from that.
Okay.
Because we have a meeting on October next week, so
Yeah.
it gives us the ability to make
Revise.
adjustments,
Okay.
and then, so from like the rush perspective, we decided that it made sense to launch it separately.
Do you wanna go through Polko real quickly?
Sure. So the town has a platform called Polko, which we have been using for several different kinds of surveys. We did the 2024 community survey. We also did a survey for the RTS study. Earlier this year, we've also used it. We did another one, the Large House Review Committee used Polko for the platform as well. So it's a pretty robust software that allows us to capture information, and I can produce reports from it. As soon as the survey closes, I can have it produce reports very easily the next day. So I'd like to utilize that same platform since we already have it and the town has a subscription and we've used it successfully. So that would be my recommendation.
So it goes email out to like, how does it get out to people?
Sure. So the survey is created, it's a sort of another version of Survey Monkey, if you will. So it's a digital survey. So we would publicize the survey widely through all of the town's communication channels. And we're also looking into a possibility of sending a postcard out to every household in Needham, as we've done for other efforts as well. So
I think that's some of the feedback we're looking for.
What would the postcard be? Would the postcard be letting people know and then like with a QR code to the survey or
Yes.
something? Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly. And we thought about also printing up the QR codes to distribute in the businesses around Needham Center and around as well. So it would be, you're not, my goal would be for people to say, I don't want to hear one person say, I didn't know about the survey. That's my goal.
So just in terms of survey content, it's broken up into, so first, just to introduce, this is kind of the language that's in the project website. Shouldn't be anything too surprising here. Our intent is also, we're designing an animation to kind of make all three of the alternatives more accessible. Understanding that plan views are hard for a lot of people to kind of fully comprehend. So we'll be presenting those animations next Monday, and looking for your feedback on that. But the intent would be to make respondents watch the animation before answering these questions. So section 1 is kind of about the person responding and about their visits to Needham Center now. So what is your connection to Needham Center? Resident, worker, business owner, etc.
Are you able to pick multiple?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing.
Choose all or.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's
Choose all
people
different
that live, work, own.
Right.
in Needham.
Yep. You can choose, based on each question, you can choose whether or not people can have multiple.
Can I make a suggestion then also to indicate I'm a Needham resident or I'm not a Needham resident is a separate question? And the reason is, I think, to get to your question about out of town residents and their feedback and how they interact with the downtown is different than how residents do. I think it'd be useful to have that data
Well,
separately.
yeah, because I
Yes,
have
yes.
clients that don't live in Needham.
Exactly.
At all.
And their needs are gonna be different than maybe the clients who do live in Needham.
Right, right.
What is your age? How often do you visit Needham Center? How do you usually get to Needham Center? When do you usually visit Needham Center?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could we swap 3 and put it at 4 and move 4 to the top? Because I find it's easier when someone says, like, how many times a week do you come? And then the next question is whether your weekday mornings, like, those two kind of marry each other a little better.
So, sorry, what would be the order?
Put 4 above 3.
And then for number 4, could you also include commuter rail or public transportation as an option?
Yes, thank you.
I would do public transportation just because there's the bus as well as the train station.
Still gonna keep other in there. Helicopter.
Where's coming in lifts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, when you make a trip, how many shops, restaurants, businesses do you typically visit?
Can you add none as an option?
Even if you're just walking around the common
Yeah, if you're just.
Sure, yeah.
You typically
or the,
visit during
yeah,
the trip.
or the Greenfield.
How often do you pass through Needham Center without stopping? In your experience?
It might be. Maybe we would add the hospital or medical to this. I think there are a lot of people that come to BID or their doctor's offices.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
So
So like as,
How would you ask the question?
I don't know.
You're trying to figure out how many, like how much business to the downtown does the
Right there.
hospital?
Yeah, and
require?
if you come for a visit, you might, yeah.
Could say, what is your connection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purposes.
appointment.
Appointments.
Medical appointment.
Yeah.
Especially if it's choosing multiple.
okay, in your experience, what prevents you from visiting or driving through Needham Center more often? This is check all that apply. What other towns do you visit for shopping, dining, recreation, and why? For those visiting frequently, what makes your visits enjoyable? What would make them even better?
I just wanted to highlight that last one. I think that was one that I had suggested because, and it had come up in a previous meeting that we had about trying to measure hypotheticals versus existing actual behaviors. And I think there's, I just wanted to sort of capture that in that suggestion, in saying, you know, what are the behaviors that are currently drawing people to Needham Center, and of the people who are visiting often, sort of over indexing on that experience and better understanding, you know, what is already good and potentially what could be better, just sort of as another way to slice the data. Because some of the earlier questions with the demographics and whatnot, I think could be really interesting opportunities as we're considering them as a committee to look at, you know, which experiences are sort of clustering into sort of different response groups. So I was hopeful that would be an informative one for us.
One question I have is, should we break that into two separate questions? Because I think there's one question is what makes your current visits enjoyable, and then what would make them better. I wonder if actually separating them out would force somebody to answer both questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why
think
did,
so.
could we take out what other towns do you, like, it's a really long survey as it is, and to ask open-ended questions, like, it's a lot to ask for people. I don't know why we have that in there, I'm wondering, because we're.
So I think
talking about
for,
Needham.
true, I think one of the question was particularly like Needham residents who might be going to other, like if you're getting in a car and you're going to a destination, are they choosing a destination in Needham or are they choosing a destination out of Needham? And if so, why are they choosing the destination out of Needham instead of in Needham? I think that was the question. I think also, you know, at least in my world, we do a lot of like looking around our neighboring communities and kind of surveying what's successful. And it was just an idea of trying to find out like, what are the things that they might be attracted to in those communities that might lend itself to our downtown.
Yeah, especially if we're looking at how best to use sidewalk space, we could look at communities that these customers are finding attractive to go to and get some insights from that. All right, next section is regarding parking behavior. So where do you usually park when visiting town center, on street, in a lot, either public or private lot, or they use a different mode. What is your level of willingness or ability to park further away from and walk to your destination in exchange for more amenities? Are there certain times of day when it is difficult to find parking in town center? And that's check all that apply. When parking is difficult, what do you usually do?
Hold on one second. Question 12. Amy, can you create a sort of a slide bar where someone can say, you know, from one extreme to the next? So they, you know, if you, 0 would be neutral, and you know, they just graph it.
Yes.
And so
Agree, like,
agree and not agree.
strongly agree,
Yeah.
somewhat agree, yes, you can do those.
All right, so instead of like check.
I agree, yeah, I like that.
Right, when parking is difficult, what do you usually do? When you come to town center, how often are your trips for quick errands versus longer visits?
So one thing I was wondering is if we could. Quick or long, that's subjective. So could we say like 15 minutes or less, or 30 minutes or more, like, because what I think is a quick visit might not be the same as what Liz thinks is a quick visit.
What would you think would be considered quick? Like 15-30 minutes?
I mean, to me, a quick visit,
15
yeah,
minutes,
15-20 minutes is a short visit.
15 minutes is quick.
So you can put in a meter. What's the shortest we can put in a meter? Is it 10 minutes?
And Nichols.
15.
15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plus minutes.
Oh, no, I'm thinking, so.
All right, that's it for the parking section. Then we get to preferences regarding potential improvements. So please rate how the following features would affect your experience in Needham Center. Plan for you. When thinking about the Needham Center redesign, how important are the following goals? These are reflect the categories in the matrix.
We just had feedback from the chamber about that, and they asked under economic development. And I don't know if it would be a separate one or if they're suggesting just to modify it a little bit, but having a healthy variety of thriving businesses.
Maybe a different category.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be its own.
We had an interesting comment when, so we brought some businesses, developers and owners, property owners to the planning board, because we're curious about some questions. One real estate agent said that some towns require banks to go through a special permit and restaurants are more easily come into town versus Needham. Banks, restaurants, much more difficult to try to make it harder for banks to take over our.
So in all fairness, there's only so much control we have in this
No,
process.
no, I'm not
But yeah,
saying this will change anything, but you know, the variety of businesses is nice.
I think variety is a little bit different than just economic development.
All right, next question is basically rank the 3 alternatives from 1 to 3. And we'll provide a link to the latest plans at that time for people's reference.
Is it gonna be like this, or it will be more?
Will be pictographical, is that the question?
Yeah, like, are you gonna use some more?
Yeah, so it'll probably be the same kind of stylizing that we presented in May. So still like a role plan, but as graphical as.
So we'll get FOCO and see how we
We
can
can show
integrate
that
imagery.
next week.
The next week.
Yeah.
Like looking at the plan, but we've been looking at it for weeks and it's getting easier, but like.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like looking at like
It's very
lines, so like, I know like a lot of time we've used, like, street level kind of.
Yeah, so I don't,
Person level, and that may be too difficult or.
I know we weren't planning on having street level renderings just because a lot of that is what's going on the sidewalk. We don't really want to specify that. So that's where the animations come in of like, how does each alternative change the curb line, which is what we're looking for feedback on. So, but I think next week we'll have the animations, we'll have the stylized plots, and we can kind of talk through, is this adequate? And then just an open-ended final thoughts. Do you have any other comments?
Good.
Yeah, they look where you find this.
Yeah, I'm just- oh wow.
Yes, you are, so.
Actually, there.
Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item. This. Discuss the survey, and I guess it's potential open house event in October. It's part of the same one, but.
So I think we're trying to figure out like what a timing would look like, when we would want to do something. I think really just to start getting things on the calendar, because there's so many different projects happening in town, and there isn't a night when there isn't multiple things going on.
So you want to do an open house like we've done before,
We're
or?
talking an open house. What does that mean?
Yeah, so similar to the event that we held in February, that was in town hall. And the design team and town staff and committee members were there from like 9 to 4, and people could stop in whenever they wanted. There were different boards throughout the room, kind of showing the plans. We could have at that point renderings, potentially to have some graphic that's not a plan view. Background on the project, information on the timeline. And it's, gives people the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with different folks involved with the project and give their feedback.
How many people came to that event?
So at least 100.
So I think what we're trying to do is figure out the best method to get constructive feedback on how we will move the project forward. And that can be, we don't like the project, or it can be like this alternative, or we want you to tweak this, or we like this curb line, can you change this curb line? I think having like a simple event where there's a microphone and people just get up and talk, I think it can be intimidating for people who may have differing opinions to speak out. I think you get a lot of, I don't like, or like, it's hard to focus it on specifics about this specific project and how can we get something constructive? So what we're trying to figure out, and I'm looking for some guidance on this, is how can we do outreach to the community that will get measurable constructive feedback on what people like and how to move forward, that isn't gonna turn into something that is protracted and not necessarily giving us clarity about each of these alternatives. So for example, if we get comments about like, well, I don't like X because there isn't enough parking, and in all 4 alternatives or 3 alternatives, we have the same number of parking, that's not necessarily a constructive feedback point. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it as constructive as possible.
Well, I can tell you 9 to 4 is not the right time frame.
No, that's not,
It
yeah.
would be on a weekend.
Still,
Oh.
not
So you think it should be a weeknight?
100%,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
We could also do both.
I think you,
Yeah.
yeah, I
If you-
think.
Yeah, if we want to do both, we could do both, but yeah, definitely, I think you're gonna get more. More in an evening
Is it
meeting.
possible to do some kind of interactive board where the feedback is individualized, but yet data, like we can all see? Yeah, I'm making this up. I don't know, a kiosk that,
Like when you vote.
yeah,
Like
kind
a
of like,
voting,
yeah,
so
like
that
a-
people don't get intimidated and they can go and they
right.
can privately vote on what they want.
Yeah, so we've done things with like small breakout tables, so you have a smaller group of people talking, people feel more comfortable. You can have people who have specific, it depends on how we organize it, but you could, like, if you wanted to use the matrix as an example, you literally could have a table on each of the items and people can express their opinions about like, I like this about the pedestrian stuff, I like this about the parking, I like this about the traffic flow. So you could break it out that way. It sounds like we're talking about potentially 2 events, one on a weekend and one on a weeknight, which I think is helpful. I'm thinking 2 hours, 3 hours max. I mean, I feel like if it's an open house and people can come in and come out, at least people have flexibility, but if you leave it too open,
Yeah.
it'll be harder.
I would say like, because the town-wide survey is likely going to be up concurrently, it's more like giving the opportunity for conversations and for them to have opinions or to ask clarifying questions versus like letting us know their preference, because we're going to be getting their preference in the survey.
I think nuance too, like, right, survey is not gonna provide much nuance. It's not gonna provide the little edit, right? It's gonna be the big thing. Is there a weeknight that works better for the various user groups that we have here? Cause like, I'll tell you, town meetings, I mean, Artie's probably in like 40 of them right now, are Monday through Wednesday. Pretty much consistently, and I would say, like tonight, we had a meeting at PSAB for the tree committee, we have this meeting, and we have a board orientation. And that's pretty indicative of every night. So Wednesday night could work. There are other meetings, but if we're doing a Saturday and we're doing a Wednesday, that does give people 2 opportunities. And do you think we should do it during the survey, after the survey? Like, what time frame do you think we should do it, as far as like, that could at least help us narrow down some dates?
I would say doing it while you were saying concurrent, because when they start taking the survey, it's gonna bring up a lot of these questions. And that's gonna put them in the mode of thinking about what they would give for feedback when they actually showed up at the event.
We could even do like a kiosk where people could just take the survey there if it's easy for them, or like a QR code.
We had a live survey in our last large house. Yeah, last large house for you, open public presentation and Q&As. We had a live survey going on where people at the end, we said, hey, they stayed at the end, we're gonna live survey, and then I forget all the questions, but we had a live survey of the various things.
I mean, how long did you think we should have the survey out for?
I would say no less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, this particular one was actually literally a live survey.
Yes. It sort of the sweet spot with surveys is 2 to 3 weeks, because you have them open any longer than that, and it starts to lose its sort of urgency to get people to respond.
And it'd be like reminders that go out.
It will be all over the town's communication channels. People will be sick of hearing about the survey, trust
Yeah,
me.
one of the struggles we just have is that either there's so much noise that people aren't seeing it, or they're just not subscribed. So again, pushing
The
the
newsletter, yep.
town's newsletter, pushing our listservs,
But I also think if you're able to get the survey QR codes out to businesses,
Yeah.
it helps us say to our customers,
Yeah.
you've been telling us you want a voice, here's your opportunity.
So I'm just thinking timing wise, and then we have town meeting as part of it too, so I'm just trying to think about when we launch it. It may make sense to do it like on the back half of the month, so after we talk to the select board on the 14th. And then have it open maybe through Halloween, or maybe even push it back a week from that, just trying to
Should this event be
clear
a
the
kickoff
noise.
for it? Should the in-person event
Kick off the
be the
survey.
kickoff, like after you, everyone, and here's the, like they can start the surveying then?
I think Paul was saying like. If
Yeah.
primes, if you do it
Primes.
before.
Like it to
it's
germinate.
primes, You could
Okay.
get there and.
Right.
Cause I think people are coming in cold, they don't really know
Right.
what
What
it is
questions
that
they
they're
wanna
really
ask.
concerned with, but if they take this survey, they're
But
gonna
then
have.
they can't change their answers after.
Right.
They're gonna be-
Oh, I got my answer, or I guess I changed my. Well,
But that would mean we wouldn't survey them until after both events have already been.
at least one, yeah.
But maybe when before they start the survey, you can say, feel free to read through these questions. And we will be live here to answer them more in depth before you start the survey if you have questions. And if you don't have questions, I just complete the survey as is. And if I'm a person who's like, oh, well, I don't understand this and I don't understand that, then it pushes me to come out to the public outreach where I can ask my questions.
Maybe kick
What
them
about
off
a
the same day.
PDF, Diane? Like a PDF a PDF of the survey questions, just on the Envision project website, just so people can sort of see and understand what they're
Yeah.
gonna have to be thinking about.
I think we might be popular enough that they're already out there. So, but it's only a good thing, right? But yes, I get that as well. So it sounds like we'll revise them and have them available, the survey questions, have them available for next week, and we'll have a better idea of what the open house timing will look like and what maybe the communication strategy will be as well.
Would you have it at here, the town hall, or the high school, or?
I mean, I feel like because we're in the middle of it, it's a nice location, because you can like, if we did something in Powers Hall, you literally look out the window and you can see.
So that they're
The center?
open, right? And I wonder if the spooky walk would be a great place to advertise it.
I was just gonna suggest the spooky walk. That'll get a lot of foot
October
traffic in town.
25th. Saturday,
Yeah.
October 25th.
Are there not 4 options, not 3? One is to leave it alone.
How is,
Options.
Eileen has her hand raised again.
Yeah, go ahead, Eileen.
Hi, I was just gonna say about the Harvest Fair and the Spooky Walk, both have the same dynamic of people that are participating. I think it's important that we go to other places like perhaps the senior center or a high school, football game or something along those lines, because most of the people that are gonna be at both those events are walking to town or riding their bikes, and it's not accounting for the 55+ community or even people who rely on their cars. So we need to think about not just like, maybe we need to set something up at the senior center, maybe, I think that should be considered.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you get people to only do the survey once?
So there is a mechanism set within the survey that only allows one response per IP address. So if you're trying to submit it multiple times, it will say, thank you, but you've already submitted your survey.
But they could go on different devices.
Sure.
We could, I'll say the RTS survey, which I would say
Yeah.
people have as many, well, maybe not as many strong feelings, but they have very strong feelings about the RTS as far as like, I'll say positively. And we had a really high respondent number. It was like 2,500, I think.
We had about 2,400.
And I will tell you, because a lot of the open-ended questions, I would say most people took advantage of those open-ended questions. So unless they were very creative with changing their answer each time, you definitely saw a wide variety of people and their perspectives. So one would hope that there's enough safeguards in there that, I mean, if someone really wants to game it, sure, you can game it, but I think it would take a lot of effort to do that.
Yeah, and statistically small.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we're not the ones voting on the project.
All right, the next agenda item is to approve the minutes from 4/7 and 5/19.
I would just mention, we already approved the ones from April 28th. There was an error in which the April 7th meetings were not posted on YouTube. They've been posted on YouTube, and we now have minutes on those as well. So that's why it's just out of order. And again, I apologize for only getting that out today.
All right, the only question is for the April 7th minutes, there was a horrible error. My name was spelled wrong. It's like teenage, I should change my name. As amended.
All you do is search for your name.
For things.
Right.
Something with it. Okay, other than that, yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved or seconded.
Okay. So it's like a roll call vote, because we're hybrid. Eileen Baker,
Yes.
Tim Bolger, chair votes aye. Artie Crocker,
Yeah,
Lee Selcock,
Aye.
all good.
Yes.
Michael Grice,
Aye.
aye. Liz Hay,
Yes.
Paula Jacobson,
Aye.
Kevin Keen,
Aye.
Avery Newton,
Aye.
Diane Nanny,
Aye.
Paul O'Connor, Karis Lustig.
Okay.
And the meeting minutes are approved. And the next one is, we gotta do it again. Adjourn.
Oh.
Uh,
I make a motion we adjourn unless anyone wants. to
Second,
stay.
okay, all right, go ahead, roll call vote again, Eileen Baker.
Aye. Am I
Tim
supposed to
Bolger,
say? I'm
aye.
sorry, I lost you.
Artie
Aye.
Crocker,
all right, there it is.
Lee Feldbach,
Aye.
all good,
Aye.
Michael Grice,
Aye.
Say, Paula Jacobson,
Aye.
Kevin Keen, Dave Newton,
Aye.
Diane Nanny,
Aye.
Paul O'Connor, Karis Lustig.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.